Today, in Gabbing the Ghouls, I am here to share a cautionary tale with everyone, and a triumph of how far we've come from where we've been.
What?
This month, I've watched a lot of movies.
Oh.
And two of them recently were remakes. Earlier, I told everyone I was only going to gab one ghoul. I fucking lied. I'm going to gab two fucking ghouls here today.
We asked him not to do that, and now he's doing it.
No, we told you no. We said one ghoul.
We definitely said not to do this. No.
So, last week, 2 weeks ago, as of release, I watched The Crazies.
Yeah.
And I watched House of Wax.
Which House of Wax? The 2000s remake, obviously, right?
Yep.
Does it?
Those are two movies I've heard of.
Does it hold up to
Crazies,
my memory of it?
I'll tell you in a minute.
Okay.
The Crazies is a really good movie. It's a remake of a Romero, which...
okay.
Yeah, which was one of his movies that he made as a protest against the Vietnam War.
Right.
Ooh, nice.
Basically, the movie is him being like, how would you guys feel if we did what we were doing over there on U.S. soil? Bet you'd feel different about it, huh? Maybe we shouldn't do that.
I love Romero's particular brand of social commentary.
Right.
We've got to start covering Romero movies on this show. Hot damn.
Firmly of the opinion, the man was never happy when he made a movie a day in his life. He's never made a feel-good movie.
No.
It's all commentary.
He wasn't having fun.
And that was a very good movie. And from what I've heard, a really good remake. I'm planning on watching the one from, I think it's like 73. Old-ass movie.
Yeah, that's when Romero
Obviously,
was
Vietnam
making
War.
movies. Yep.
So I want to check that one out. But, I was in a remake in a kind of a mood.
Oh, sure.
So... after watching Wrong Turn, The Crazies, Resident Evil Apocalypse, and Tomb Raider in one day,
that was my fault.
Oh, God.
That was my fault. We wanted to watch a movie. We wanted to watch Resident Evil, and then we couldn't find the next Resident Evil. So I was like, I know what's almost equivalent. Came out around like when the first Resident Evil movies started coming out. Let's watch Lara Croft.
I don't recommend.
I love Lara Croft.
It's
Tomb
a fun
Raider.
time.
It's so
There's new
bad.
metal in it. I'm sure you're surprised.
What? Is there a Rob Zombie
This is not
song
the
in
tale of
credits?
Lara Croft and Resident Evil. This is the tale of two remakes.
Right.
And let me just talk about House of Wax real quick.
Okay, yeah, I remember that sucking. Does it?
So, I gotta give it a 50-50, because it's not as bad as I remember.
Sure.
But my rating did not change. I think I gave it like a 3 out of 5.
Ah, okay.
All
right.
And
So
my
that's a
rating
6
has not
out of 10.
changed.
That's a solid
It
6.
is a 6 out of 10 because there's a lot of cool things.
Firmly
The waxworks are neat and all that stuff. But I had forgotten just how creepy and voyeuristic and leering so many old horror movies were, especially in the 90s and the aughts.
The aughts were a time for that, weren't they? Because you've said that about the Bloody Valentine remake as well.
Yeah, oh, that's bad.
I think it probably...
That's horrific. That came out the year after House of Wax. The original Bloody Valentine, I'm going to say it, maybe my favorite slasher.
Ooh, really?
It's really good. I like it. It's a quite nice, straightforward story. But like the early aughts, late 90s, all the 90s and aughts, let's be real here, leering, gross movies. And House of Wax, there's a scene where this man is trying to kidnap this girl, and he's taping her down to a chair and trying to restrain her. And it is so unnecessarily sexual. I do not like it.
Ugh.
And it's a lot of movies of the era had this thing where it's like, well, how do we make the movie creepier? Let's make the bad guy a sexual predator.
Of course, right.
And that it happened a lot. And I'm
Stephen
really glad
King,
that we
hold
have
on.
generally moved away from that.
Yeah.
Stephen King, how did you get here?
Neither of these are the movies I said I was going to gab. I'm just realizing.
Another
you
major
definitely-
detraction from House of Wax, though, is that it has Jared Padalecki in it.
Does
It
it?
does. Oh, it's baby Jared Padalecki.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
just like
oh, no.
just like Friday the 13th, 2009 does. And he's not great in either of them, I don't think.
Why is he there?
What's he doing in there?
Oh, look at him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
he
no,
was like a child.
he's got the Bieber cut going strong.
Oh, God.
He's a
Okay,
baby.
so here's Nina. The Nina's never watched Supernatural corner. I've never watched Supernatural.
Oh, neither have I.
No,
I've
really?
never watched.
I wouldn't have picked up on that.
I've never watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Just like something about
same.
as much as they seem like genres, I like TV shows that I would love. I just haven't gotten into them. I actually don't know the difference between Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles. They're the
I
same
had to
person in
really
my
think to
head.
remember his name because the only name I could think was Jensen Ackles. Because when I look at him, I'm not thinking that's Jared Padalecki. I'm thinking that's
thinking
that
that's the guy from
Supernatural guy.
Supernatural.
And I only know the names of like
Look
two
up
people
this
who
guy
were in
now.
Supernatural. And that's Jensen Ackles and the other one.
I know Jensen Ackles because he was in The Boys, and I haven't watched the
shit.
season he's
who is
in
he in
because
The
I got
Boys?
sick of Soldier Boy. I got
Okay.
sick of
Okay.
it before we got to that
Wait,
point.
wait.
I
Before it
was
was
way
cool.
too sick of
he was
The
cranking
Boys.
the Soldier Boy?
Yeah,
Whoa.
Hot damn.
and he's like, he seems from all the clips I've seen to be really like funny and playing against type, and I would love to watch it, but I just don't want to watch The Boys anymore.
I
Valen.
haven't picked it up at all because I keep seeing stuff about like how awful the fans of the show are.
The fans are bad. The show is not great either.
Oh.
Like, okay, here's Nina's
I've heard
really
that it's
hot
like
take.
good, not great, but like
It doesn't, it keeps trying to like criticize specific elements of specific things and then ends up not actually saying anything at the end of the day, in my opinion.
disappoint.
I watched the first 2 seasons for reference. I haven't watched the third, but I just don't think, I think that the things that it does wrong, it's like, oh, like this is the bad stuff in the world. And then it does that same bad stuff kind of unironically, specifically with how it treats its one Asian American woman like main character. So my friend Jackson and I have talked about this. We've talked about this at length. It's not important, but I don't like the series. I think it's kind of hypocritical and not as good as everyone thinks it is.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I know Jackson always has harsh words for genre deconstruction properties, so I can imagine what he was saying about it.
Anyway, that's a ghoul I didn't mean to gab, but
Yeah. We got a little sidetracked there. Noah, what was it that you were actually planning to cover?
It's a movie called 1408. It's about a haunted hotel room. It's a Stephen King short story.
Another Stephen King
it is
story
the-
about a haunted hotel room?
I know,
this
right?
is what I'm saying.
I really recommend this one. I don't want to get into it too much, but it feels more like a Silent Hill movie than any of the Silent Hill movies. Like, this feels like an actual true entry from Silent Hill versus the other ones that are just like, oh yeah, get it? There's Pyramid Head. Isn't that cool? Sexy nurses. Isn't that cool? No, but this one actually, like, it's fucked up and weird. I very much recommend it. It was not a good movie for me to watch, like, as I was falling asleep. But it's really fun.
Neat. I feel like I need to get somewhat into Silent Hill, just enough that I understand like what's going on with it.
Right?
Do you want the 8-hour lore
'Cause,
video
like,
I watched? I can send it to you.
I've never played a Silent Hill game, and I don't know like what's happening with it at all.
I think lore videos, unironically, are
Yeah.
probably the
No,
way to
I'll-
go.
Yeah,
I'll
I'm
send
not
you the
gonna
lore
go
videos I
play
was
the older
watching.
ones, right? Like if I do anything,
worth
I'm
it.
gonna play the one that has the tall vampire booby lady in it. Because
That's Resident
like,
Evil.
oh, is
Yeah,
that
that's
Resident
not
Evil?
even Silent
Shit, I thought that was a Silent Hill game. God.
And if you're gonna play, if
I'm
you want to
gonna
play the
cut
tall
that so
movie
nobody hears me
vampire lady
saying
Resident
it.
Evil, no, you should play just 7 and 8 of the Resident Evils because they go with each other. They don't really have anything from the other games, and
They're a contained duology.
they're a contained duology, and they're pretty darn fun,
Well, that's cool. I'm probably gonna do that actually.
And they're good.
and they're good.
Neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got even
So, Jeff-
less idea what's going on in Silent Hill than I thought, actually.
So true.
Okay, so
So Jeff, earlier you had mentioned that you had gripes.
I've got a gripe. I've got a gripe with people that I'm seeing on the internet. And like, you know, these are dumb people,
Oh, no.
clearly. But like,
So
okay, so I've seen, if it was just one person saying this, I could shrug it off. But I've seen like 4 people in the last couple of weeks talking about Midnight Mass in the context of like religious criticism in horror media. Which is the discussion
the Catholics,
that
because I know the Catholics
belongs
don't
in.
like that movie.
I don't know, actually. But like that's the kind of discussion that Midnight Mass belongs in, right? Obviously. It's a really good piece of that like subgenre. But the problem is that the thing that I've seen these people saying over and over is that they're saying that it's like very even-handed and like, quote, doesn't pick a side about whether the church is like a good or a bad thing.
Did they?
Okay,
did they
I'm
have
so
to,
glad
like,
you're reacting
go
the
out and
same
take
way
a
that I
shit
did.
whenever Bev Keane was on screen?
Right? Like,
did they miss half the show?
The whole show ends. Spoilers for Midnight Mass. The fact that the whole show ends.
It ends?
With Father Paul, the good guy, the well-intentioned man in the church, deciding to burn the whole thing down and let everyone die. Sounds to me like the overall statement being made by the show is no matter how well-intentioned certain people in the church are, the whole thing is ultimately rotten from the inside and will have to be destroyed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
That's what I get from it.
Yeah. So spoilers for my book, kind of. One of the only problems that I have with my own story that I've told, which is not a real problem, but I have like struggled with it the further I've gone with this story and its consequences, is that the church does keep going, is that it doesn't get burnt to the ground, and I'm trying to write a long-term institutional change instead of writing like this hard end for this institution. As someone who, you know, has a lot of issues with it itself, I like Midnight Mass's ending more because it has that statement of like, even, Father Paul says what, like, my favorite thing is that it's not supposed to be about him, it's or this like about them, but it's supposed to be about God, quote unquote, which is like the main thing that like the church has lost sight of, which nothing in Midnight Mass makes the statement that like God doesn't exist. Sure.
No,
none of it makes
he's just
the
not
statement
really part
that
of the story.
Yeah, none of it makes the statement that Christianity is false. It's not a story about the like claims and tenets of Catholicism or Christianity.
No.
It's a story about the damage that organized religion does, and the damage that these teachings that we built have done, and
and about how even the most well-intentioned people in the church are still ultimately being manipulated by worse people.
Yes. Yes, and by their own, and like even if they are the highest up, they are being manipulated by the way that the Bible was written and by the way that the faith of Catholicism and Christianity like make us think as a theology. The way that this religion makes people think is what leads Paul to do what he does, even if he's a good person. And like, so it's bad, and even Paul knows that. It's like, oh my god, I'm like so angry.
The show depicts the entire church being run by a fucking vampire. Like,
I love him so much.
That's the central conflict of the story, is that the head of the church is a fucking vampire.
Yeah, like a literal honest to God vampire.
It does not get more plain than that, does it?
I literally can't deal with that. They're calling a blood-sucking parasite an angel. That's like pretty obvious, I think.
Like,
little Noah backstory. I used to work at a church. I know, shocking. I mean, no one knew this happened.
No one knew this.
I always will tell people
there's a vampire.
Everyone who I worked with, that it lives in the boiler room.
Noah's met the vampire.
The people I worked with were very nice people.
Oh, sure.
On the whole, I don't think I worked with anyone who had like a mean bone in their body. They had no idea how actually cruel they were being at times by just saying, well, and here's what we're going to do. Big smile on their face, talking about like, you know, making sure people don't become gay by accident and shit like that.
I hate it when that happens.
Like,
it's literally ghoulish. It is the way that they will say these things like they're helping you, and it's like it's such a great spot for a horror setting in the way that Midnight Mass and like Apostle do, and Revelator. I've been talking about this recently, but it's a perfect setting for that kind of thing because everyone is
well-meaning
so
people in the world that do not realize how they sound.
Yeah.
And because they have so many like people on their side, they don't wake up to how they sound.
Oh, yeah.
Because
That's why
it's built into the book. When you say, hey, that's kind of fucked up, man. They're like, you're disagreeing with the Bible, son. You can't disagree with the word of the Lord.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And like that's why Bev Keane I think is so well written is because she of everyone believes that she is doing the right thing the most.
Mm-hmm. Paul has his doubts, and Bev's like, no, it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no matter what I do, it is justified. Yeah.
God, I hate Bev Keane.
We gotta. There's a lot more to say. We could talk about Midnight Mass.
I didn't mean to turn this into an extra Midnight Mass episode. I just thought...
And we will be talking about Midnight Mass even more in this episode.
It's going to be coming up.
So don't think we're done, but it's going to be different.
Don't turn that dial.
On that note, I want to very much recommend, I'm going to put this in the show notes. Flanagan approved God's Not Dead crossover Midnight Mass essay.
Oh shit,
I put it in the Discord server. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so good.
Very much recommend checking it out. It is the point of view of an ex-Catholic watching this show. And it was very enjoyable. And it hits a lot of points on the head that a lot of people, and this is my biggest criticism I have of like so many online creators, will interact with religious media like Midnight Mass from an atheistic perspective, or like maybe they went to church but they never really took it as seriously. Right. Not to sound very Christian.
Like, I was a better Christian than you were. Yeah, like but like you can spot
these are clearly people who did not engage in church enough to see some of this shit, and they'll be like, wow, that's fucked up. I can't believe this is it. And it's like, you see it and it's like, respectfully, why do you think this is so messed up? This was day to day for me.
Yeah, they'll say certain things. I've watched some of these creators, a lot of creators who will talk surface level about like God's Not Dead, will say things like, it's so stupid that this character does that because that makes no sense. And it's like, that is built into the core of Christianity, what this character is saying. They'll say some hateful, like homophobic, the character will say some hateful homophobic or Islamic shit. And the reviewer will be like, wow,
that came out of left field.
That person's just another human being. And like, it's so stupid that this character would say this because they should recognize,
congratulations, dude, you are not the target audience here.
Yeah, clearly you are not either side of the target audience, and you should just not be talking about this show because you don't get it from either perspective.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of the thing with Midnight Mass as well, right? Is like, I feel like it would not hit nearly as well for a person who had not spent significant time in church, right?
Mm-hmm. It'll still be good, but it doesn't press the buttons like knowing at least 5 Bev Keanes does.
Yeah, right? Like, Jesus.
Like, that sucks, man. Every time she was on screen, like, I got agitated.
There was one episode in the middle of this series that literally, when me and Becca were watching it, we needed to stop because she was just being too familiar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can name names
I
about my life, but...
Mike Flanagan had a Tumblr post recently where apparently there was a scene... initially where Erin went to the confessional and was talking to Father Paul about how she felt like she knew Aaron Green poisoned the dog. And it was kind of her talking about her fear of in church communities. Everybody kind of knows what's going on, but will turn a blind eye to it because her mom was also really abusive to her growing up.
Right.
But she helped with the church and stuff. And so everybody was like, wouldn't do anything about it. And the same sort of thing of like Bev, like, is so instrumental to the church and to the community that everybody knows she does terrible things, but nobody's willing to say or do anything about it.
Right.
And then Father Paul being like, no, I'm sure there are like so many other explanations for like what might have happened. Like, we can't say for sure that it was Bev, and him kind of doing what he does and just twisting the truth a bit and just trying to reinterpret it certain ways to fit the narrative that he wants, which is something that he likes to do, obviously. It sounded like a really interesting scene, but Netflix wanted to cut it because they felt like it dragged too much. And I was like, dang it, I want to see that scene.
I would have thought it got cut because it makes Father Paul look too like...
That's exactly what else Mike said in the post, was that the Netflix people also were like, why aren't there consequences to Father Paul knowing this information? Because it seems kind of out of character that like he just wouldn't do anything with this information like even later. But I think there are a lot of scenes in Midnight
for most of it.
I think it does kind of, personally, it's an interesting scene, and it's a commentary that does resonate on like what happens in the church.
Absolutely.
But I also, as someone who's, you know, been doing revisions lately, sometimes scenes contradict some character information in a way that makes the story less cohesive as a whole. And I think that this, with all love to Mike Flanagan, who liked the scene, I think that potentially might have made the story less cohesive overall to have included it. But we'll never know because it's not there.
Pogception, the Pog movie podcast where we pog.
Noah.
Okay.
I hate that.
No.
Welcome back to Casual Obsession, the horror movie podcast where we talk about horror movies. I'm your host, Noah, and with me today are Nina.
Hi.
Emma.
Hi.
And Jeff.
Hello.
We got the double whammy, the big two-hitter, the old 1-2 left-right jab punch kick. We got Hush and Gerald's Game today, both Flana films to wrap up Flanuary in a wonderful way.
I think
who's ready for Flanuary?
Is this the end of Flanuary?
Like 5 different moves, isn't it?
Did we not have any other Flanagan films?
I thought we were gonna do one more.
So we're not wrapping Flanuary.
What's the last one?
Ouija Origin or
I don't
want to
watch Ouija.
I've heard it's good.
We could do Before I Wake instead.
I watched it. I thought it was good. I liked it.
Okay, I'll watch it.
I didn't
just
love
for
the
him.
end spoiler.
I'll do it for him.
I thought it was good.
I mean, we could do Before I Wake instead.
Is Kate Siegel in it though?
In Before I Wake? No.
No, in Ouija.
She is in Ouija.
Briefly, yeah.
Good, excellent.
That might be the coin flipper.
The hand has been dealt.
We are here for
But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Hush and Gerald's Game.
But
so
Noah, why are we doing 2 movies in one episode?
Why, Emma, I'm so glad you asked. We're doing 2 movies because we don't know what to talk about with either of them. So if we put them together, it's a shockingly good double feature.
We do have stuff to talk about with both of them, but just not a lot.
Yeah.
Just for anyone who
just
thinks
not as much as normal.
We're doing this unnecessarily. We got stuff to say, specifically a lot to say about Gerald's Game.
Mm-hmm.
But we do want to also say some positive things in the same episode.
Exactly. Sometimes you want to have a fun shitting on a movie episode.
I have positive things to say about Gerald's Game.
I have some too.
Yeah.
But I gotta be honest, I have
not
so
much.
many fewer things about Gerald's Game, and I don't want to shit on Flanagan for an hour and a half.
No.
I love Mike.
I don't think he deserves it, but I also
King, on the other hand.
King.
Looking at you, Stephen. But you know who has nothing to do with Stephen King?
Me.
The plot of Hush, our first movie.
Yeah.
Hush is a movie about a girl named Maddie who has been deaf since she was, I believe, 9 years old.
I think
she lives on her own.
I thought it was 13.
I think they say 13.
13 years old. Like I said the first time, 13. And she lives off on a house on her own at the end of a cul-de-sac, way out there, having a nice little time being a writer for a little book called Midnight Mass.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Except it's 2016, so nobody knows what Midnight Mass is yet.
So true.
But
no one at all.
Soon they will.
They're about to find out.
If I have anything to say about it.
She lives on her own. She is deaf, and she ends up being stalked by a killer.
Wah wah.
Wah wah.
That's it.
That's
the quick one for Hush.
But what's
Hush,
the quick one for Gerald's Game?
Hush is so fast. There's not much to say.
It's a short movie. It's like an hour and
Gerald's
20.
game. Gerald's game. A couple go off on a little vacation house, a little vacation together to have some weird kinky sex.
Oh, that sounds
And-
nice.
It does.
And romantic.
It does.
And then Gerald has a fucking heart attack and dies.
Less nice.
Oh no. But that's no
Unfortunately-
problem at all. It's not like the woman was tied to a bed or anything with handcuffs.
Emma, oh
terrible
my God,
news.
Emma, I have so much terrible news for you. Gerald's wife, who I don't remember the name
Jessie.
of, is tied to the
Oh my,
bed.
Jesse.
Oh
Jesse.
no!
Tied to the bed and stuck. And the movie is about her dealing with her own emotions about being tied to the bed.
But no, surely she's not stuck to the bed the whole movie.
Terrible
She's stuck
news,
to the
Emma.
bed. Oh, Emma, terrible news. She's stuck to the bed the whole movie.
Well, I mean, you do get flashbacks to times that she wasn't tied to the bed, and if you can believe it,
But-
those are worse.
Oh boy. But you know, I'm gonna jump us back to Hush real quick. Just real quick.
Real quick.
For some ratings. I know everyone loves ratings. It's my favorite part of the show. Hush.
I love ratings.
We're looking at a 6.6 on IMDb,
Huh.
a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes,
Whoa.
Interesting.
a 67 on Metacritic,
Okay.
and a 3.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
We got
So
a
that's right.
6.6.
little disparity
Consistent.
And you know what
between
Twitter
Rotten
Brandon has to
Tomatoes
say
and
about this?
everybody else there.
Oh,
huh?
Twitter Brandon has an opinion?
Does he now?
No, he does not.
No, thank
Oh.
God.
Twitter Brandon has not
You keep
seen
bringing him
Hush.
up when he doesn't have an opinion on things. Does he have an opinion on Gerald's game? I hope he does.
Are we talking about Gerald's game?
Well, but like,
Yeah,
does
that's
he
right.
have one?
Are we talking about Gerald's game?
You can't tell me if he has one. I don't want to
Yes,
know what
he
it is
does.
yet. Okay, thank you, God.
We won't say what it is yet.
Okay.
We'll keep going. Yeah, didn't he? Oh, that was it. Oh.
I have a,
He
I have a
doesn't?
fun reveal. Don't ruin this for me.
I'm not ruining the
I have
reveal.
a fun reveal.
Okay,
Don't
there's a
ruin
reveal.
this for
I'm
me.
sorry.
So, anyways, Hush.
But on the subject of Hush, you know, I was wondering, out of a scale of 1 to 10 creepy masked killers, what would you give this movie, Emma?
I actually enjoy Hush. I think
Yeah.
it's a fun time. There's not a lot of meat to it,
Nah.
but I think
Just vibes.
it's fun.
I think there's only 15 minutes of spoken dialogue in the movie. I thought I saw somewhere.
that sounds.
20
Yeah.
minutes, maybe?
That sounds high.
I'm not
Honestly.
surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd give it like a fun 7.
Yeah,
That sounds right. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's solid. I personally give it a fun 8, but you know, we're just built different that way.
Yeah, kind of seems like most sources are putting it in the like somewhere between 6 and 7 area.
Mhm.
Kind of just like it's a good mid movie. I feel like
Yeah.
that's the right
Yeah.
place to put it. The Rotten Tomatoes
Yeah.
number is a bit high, but it's also just kind of like, you know, that's the way Rotten Tomatoes works, so that's fine.
I think Rotten Tomatoes is up here because conceptually, because Rotten Tomatoes bases things on its concept and its execution.
Yeah.
So I think because they have rated things conceptually good, but like not great.
Mm.
So like, hey, it's doing a great job at what it set out to do. We didn't like that.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Whereas this Hush doesn't set out to do very much, so it's difficult for it to miss the mark. I'm going to give it the fun 7. I think that sounds right.
Nice.
It's a good
How about
time
you, Nina?
without much going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Maddie as a character. Maddie gets Nina's strong female character badge of approval. And the killer's fun. Again, it's just real fun. It's fun. It's gonna get a fun 7 from me too. Yeah, I think that's good.
It's a really solid like home invasion movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Have fun with it. Gerald's Game, on the other
Gerald's
hand.
Game.
We got some different ratings here. Actually, they are shockingly the same ratings almost.
Curious.
We got a 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb. We got a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. We got a 77% on Metacritic. We got a 3.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. That's right. Now you may be wondering, what does Twitter Brandon have to say about Gerald's game?
What does he have
Nothing.
to say about Gerald's
And
game?
depending on how Jeff edited this and whether Nina's thing is still in here or
Leave
not,
me alone.
the answer is nothing. But I did find one of the guys that writes for Ebert,
Okay, that's completely
Named
different.
Brandon.
Brian Tellerico.
Brian Tellerico.
Any relation to
Brian.
Tommy Tallarico?
Yeah, he's his dad or something. I don't know. The first hour of this movie is so good. The last 10 minutes are so bad. In that sense, it might be the most faithful King adaptation ever.
Oof.
He rated it a 3 out of 4. He gave this movie a 75%
And then said that. Okay.
so-
That's interesting.
Okay.
and then said that.
Okay.
This
Yeah.
movie definitely does set out everything that it wants to do. I think the story it has to tell and what it wants to tell, it tells effectively.
I just wish it didn't
I
tell
just
it.
don't like it. I don't like the kind of story it's telling. I don't think that the kind of stuff that it has to say is said in the way that I like it said. Yada yada yada. 3 out of 10.
Oof.
3 out of 10 from Nina. Anyone want to one up that one? Do I have a 2 out
Sure,
of 10?
I'll give
2
it a
10,
4
2
out of 10.
4 out of 10. I see a 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10. Do I see a 5 out of 10? 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. Come up with a 5 out of 10. No 5. 6 out of 10. I got a 6 out of 10.
I was
Oh.
kind of thinking of giving it either a 6 or maybe like a soft 7 potentially. I liked it more on a repeat viewing.
Wait, I have a different review. I'll give it a
Okay,
soft 5 inches.
Hey, get his ass! Oh!
For the listeners who aren't sure, that's a reference to Gerald's game.
To Gerald's penis, even.
Gerald's lack of game, if you will.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not gonna say I feel too harsh about a 3.
No, you shouldn't.
This is not a movie I enjoy. But again,
Understandable.
okay, I'll have a lot to say when we get to it,
Yeah.
like positive and negative. But for now, that's what it'll be.
Yeah. So let's hop back to Hush.
Hush.
You know, the
Let's
movie
do.
about Maddie, who is alone at home being stalked by a killer.
Hate it
We
when
got a
that
couple of
happens.
content warnings on this one. We got flashing lights. We got home invasion, obviously enough, but the killer in this movie he's kind of fucking uncomfy.
He's
So
weird.
we'll add that one in addition to the genre definition.
He doesn't do too
And-
much like really weird stuff, but you get the impression the whole time that he's just really weird.
Mhm.
I cannot wait to talk about him.
There were 2 different moments where I paused the movie and pointed and said, Viggo Mortensen kicking the helmet moment, and then I would say something about the movie.
Oh.
Yeah, Noah has fun facts about this killer that I can't wait to talk about.
Also, it's not a Flanagan if there's not a fucked up hand.
Always.
We got fucked up hand in this movie.
Oh, we do.
Also,
We do
on that
have a
note,
fucked up
hey
hand.
Mike, I know you're listening to this episode.
No.
I asked you a question on Tumblr a week and a half ago, and now you were on your anniversary. I understand not answering yet,
Sure.
but it's been a hot minute, and you've answered other people. You gonna get to my question?
I don't
What's
think
your
so.
favorite
that
fucked
your
up
question
hand?
just sucked?
My question is, what's your favorite fucked up hand? This man clearly loves fucked up hands. He's got a
Oh
favorite.
yeah, it kind of seems like that's something he would answer.
I know what my favorite fucked up hand of his is, and we are going to talk about it today.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Also, there's a cat in this movie. Cat does not die.
Cat does
It is
Cat
put
survives.
in. Cat survives. That's all you need to know.
So yeah, there's Hush. Emma, how scary do you think Hush is?
Hush.
And we just hold that Emma for like 10 seconds.
Do you find masks creepy? Because there's a creepy mask in this movie.
For a couple of minutes.
Yeah. I'll give it a 2 out of 10 for creepy mask.
Fair.
Is there any other questions you want to ask me, Noah?
I don't think there are. I think that was it. Thank you very much, Emma.
That was the only one. Cool.
That was the only one. I might have another one later.
Oh.
So let's get a little deeper on this movie.
Into the meat?
But here's the issue, right? With 15 minutes of conversation, there's not a lot else to go into.
Yeah.
The killer kills Maddie's neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
The killer tells Maddie that since he had snuck into her house because she didn't hear him, he says that he knows that she's single and alone and no one else is coming. And then when someone else does come, her neighbor's boyfriend kills him too. And
An asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Maddie uses her patented writer's brain, TM, that she talks about earlier in the movie, about how she sees every different ending of her story. And she uses that to... Sorry. God. She uses that to figure out what might happen if she tried to get away from him, and finally ends up taking this man down. Does she kill him? I can't remember.
Yeah.
He's dead, right?
She does.
Yeah, he dies.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, she stabs him with a fucking corkscrew in the throat.
Yeah.
I love
This man
her.
goes down hard.
God, I love Maddie.
She's great.
I love this movie a lot.
I have projected a lot onto Maddie. I think we have a similar writing process. I diagnose her with ADHD and anxiety because I have those things, and I saw how she addressed situations and felt that I would do the same if I were cool, which I'm not as cool as she is.
Oh.
I'm curious because Mike has talked about how in Haunting of Hill House, there are times where people are talking to Steven about his writing, and they're just kind of monologues of tearing into him about like his writing process and stuff. And he's like, at the time, a lot of that was directed at myself as well.
Yeah.
Because he was like, I was not in a good place. But when it comes to Maddie specifically, because she writes a book called Midnight Mass, which we all know is a story written by Mike Flanagan. And so I'm curious if there were kind of parallels between Maddie's writing process and Mike's as well.
I would assume.
I'm interested. I love Maddie's writing process. So
Having
much.
7 different endings. How many
like
endings do
when
your
she-
books have?
I always have an ending set out, but things do change as I go. I think one of my favorite moments in the whole film is she is writing about Midnight Mass. She's writing Aaron, who seems to be her favorite character. Both are played by Kate Siegel, so we know Aaron is a self-insert, unironically, for Maddie. And then she has a moment where she's like, how should I end this? And her inner thoughts go like, kill Aaron. And then they're like, wait, no, people would be pissed at you and you didn't set it up right. And I'm like, that's so funny, because spoilers for Midnight Mass, Aaron does fucking die.
She does,
and
yeah.
I love this idea. To me, the way Aaron dies and the way that it's handled, to me it feels like Maddie decided to go ahead with the Aaron dies ending and then set it up, because she didn't feel she had done that well enough, by taking Aaron's death and using that to go through like a flashback that sets it up kind of retroactively, where Aaron and Riley talk about what happens when you die. Because that's how it happens in the show. And I'm like, that would, like, to me, if I were Maddie, I'm sitting there like, how do I kill Aaron and make it work? I've got it. And have that whole thing happen the way it does in the show.
Yeah.
I totally love kind of the character that Maddie has and how that kind of makes me think. I know this isn't how Mike did it, obviously, the real writer of the show, but it creates this kind of like in-world reason for why certain scenes happen the way they do.
Yeah. Tangentially tagging off of that, I love the way that the neighbor in this movie is played by Samantha Sloyan, who then plays Bev Keane in Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
And she, when talking about the reading the book, specifically says, I loved Riley, I loved Aaron. And then in the show, her character hates both of those people.
It's so funny.
Very good. Very good.
It's so good. There's so many fun little in-world like things that like work with Maddie as the writer of this story.
Yeah.
It makes me like Midnight Mass even more, thinking of like why Maddie would write this story, that like things that would not come up in Hush. But like, is Maddie ex-Catholic? We don't know.
I think it would make sense.
I would think probably, yeah.
That's so
How do you
fun.
write Midnight Mass if you're not ex-Catholic? Is
I
the
know,
better
I
question.
No, true.
I was gonna say that's what happened to Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
I just love thinking of what Maddie's experience could have been that would make her write characters, because we know what Mike's were that made her write characters
Right,
like
yeah.
Bev Keane and Father Paul and Aaron.
Yeah, because he knew
But if
those
Aaron is a
people.
self-insert, then what has Maddie, like, what parts of herself, because they do seem like similar characters too, in the way that they're kind of isolated people, and all of this, like, the way that they handle trauma is to kind of withdraw in on themselves and not look for as much support. And it seems really interesting to think that that's how she wrote Aaron in this world. I don't know. I just really like it. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I love that Mike was still working on Midnight Mass and decided in this movie to make like detailed reference to it, knowing that it would be a few more years before he'd be able to put it out. Like that's just very cool. I think that's
pretty great.
fun.
I think that's so cool. I love the moment that she said the names Riley and Aaron before the book's name came on screen, because I didn't know that was canon or anything. The moment that they said Riley and Aaron, I'm like, those are my babies.
Now, real quick, before we talk anymore,
Right.
there is
Important.
one gigantic, huge, big stick a pin in it caveat for this movie.
Yeah.
Kate Siegel plays Maddie,
Right.
and Kate Siegel is not deaf.
What?
And I know. You're probably shocked to hear this.
I am.
Because she did such a good job. She did not do such a good job. Maddie Simmons, the girl from A Quiet Place, called the movie inauthentic, saying that she saw it with some of her deaf friends and they were highly critical of it because it did not feel real.
Fair enough.
Specifically because of problems with the ASL they use, apparently?
Partially with that, and also there's a scene when Maddie's neighbor and the killer are banging on the window, and many deaf people have said, I would have, for lack of a better term, I would have heard that. They would have felt the vibration from banging on the window.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, like, there's moments in an attempt to make it seem like Maddie doesn't know what's going on and getting neat scenes like her friend getting killed behind her because she didn't see it. They did bypass real world, here's how it would go.
Right, yeah.
However, Flanagan and Siegel are both open and apologetic about their decision to cast Siegel. I am reading, by the way, IndieWire's October 20th, 2020, How Deafness in Horror Evolved Beyond Damsels in Distress by Kristen Lopez. I am quoting this directly right now.
And we will have that article in the show notes as well, because it has a lot more information than what we're saying here.
Yeah. Kate said, I listen and I apologize. We were given a strong education when the film came out. She realizes anything that they say about why they cast a non-deaf actress is just an excuse. But let's see. Factoring in how few disabled women are on screen at all, Maddie remains a heroine of many disabled and able-bodied fans. This is not something Kate said. This is just something that like is in
people have had, there have been mixed reactions to this film. There is a lot of rightful criticism, but I have seen on Reddit, like, and Tumblr, people who are deaf who did like the movie, which obviously 100% does not negate the people who didn't. It's just like many things, people will take what they can get sometimes. So Maddie is one of those like cases.
Yeah.
For example, A Quiet Place, a very well regarded movie in the deaf community because they took it very, very seriously and actually had a deaf actress in the movie. You know, you know, things have come a long way from then. Very different from how things used to be.
Yeah,
but
and most
importantly,
is like kind of just the thing that like Flanagan and Siegel are both like, yeah, we fucked up here. Shouldn't have done that. Like that's the most you could ask him to say at this point, right?
Right. There's nothing, the movie exists, it's out, it is what it is, and they acknowledge that. There's a lot of creators these days that are being like big enough to kind of take that criticism and admit to it. And I'm really glad that Flanagan and Siegel are two such people.
Yeah, they're doing the whole. They did also have a deaf like person on the team to make sure that they weren't going wildly out there. which the main difference was changing Maddie from being born deaf to being deaf later in life, because that gave her a
explained why
sense of
she didn't
isolation
have-
from the deaf community.
Yeah.
And also it makes it less problematic for Kate to have played the role, because that is something that like the consultant had pointed out, that, hey, come on, you can't have someone be deaf from birth. And
Also, the whole
You know.
plot point of her having an inner voice that is like personified and she says sounds like her mother cannot have existed before they made that change.
Nope.
And I thought it was a really like fun part of the movie was her inner voice. So I'm glad that that was able to exist in the final film.
Yeah.
I wonder if that also
I-
maybe contributes to the
Emma's-
inauthenticity, though. Sorry.
I don't even remember what I was going to say anymore.
Emma tried twice to start. I'm sorry.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say now. Both of these movies that we're talking about today seem like very small budget movies as well. And I know that's something that was talked about with Hush in particular. And one of the reasons why they had Kate Siegel play Maddie rather than hiring somebody else to do it was budget constraints, which obviously isn't an excuse at all. But
it is
both
an
of these
explanation.
movies, both of these movies feel like resume builders of just kind of like movies that don't cost a lot to make. They show Mike Flanagan's potential, and Gerald's game in particular opened the door for him to work on Dr. Sleep, which has then kind of opened the door for him to work on more things as well. But I believe Mike and oh my gosh, I'm forgetting Kate Siegel, when they say like this is something we're not going to do again. And especially now that they have, I mean, Mike Flanagan has the credentials now and kind of the
ability to make a
presence
statement.
and ability where in the projects he does have in the future, I think he's going to be a lot more careful and not do those sorts of things, because I think he'll have the budget and the tools necessary and the push necessary to make sure that things are being treated respectfully and everything like that. Yeah.
I think that we've seen with his most recent projects when he has made the decision to address different marginalized groups, specifically like within like Midnight Mass, and how he decided to address different religions and different kind of stuff within that. He really does go out of his way to be respectful. So I have a lot of faith in him.
Yeah.
Maybe this is misplaced and I'll regret this in years. I always hate putting my faith into anyone. But, you know, as of now, I want to believe
Mike,
the best
don't
of
do
this
anything
guy.
dumb.
Please.
Please.
And answer my Tumblr ask.
Yeah.
I want to know his favorite fucked up hand.
Don't come out
So-
as anti-vax like Zach Levi.
And
Did you see
Latita
that?
Wright as well. No, did he? Zach Levi.
He tweeted something like last night. For
Jesus,
those
seriously?
of you listening, he's anti-vax, and then because of that, some other interviews have popped up where people have been like, he said some problematic stuff before, and so it's becoming a big
Whack.
thing.
Anyway, I don't want. That sucks. That sucks. Anyway, so are we good to talk about Hush like proper? I know we
That's
already
what
kind of
we have
launched
been
into
doing.
it. Okay.
Yeah, I thought that's what
Yeah.
we were doing.
We're well into
So
that.
I want to talk about John Gallagher Jr.
Yeah.
The actor who. Okay, so we have had him. We have seen this man once before on the podcast.
Oh shit, have we?
In Underwater.
Oh.
And
really?
and I cannot wait for us to see him again on the podcast in 10 Cloverfield Lane, where he plays the babiest of fucking boys. And so to see the difference between my absolute cinnamon roll baby that he is in 10 Cloverfield Lane, one of like my like just I have whoopified this character character so much because I love him. And then we come to Hush, and he's playing. His body language is so good.
His like slouch,
his mouth
like
breathing.
mouth breathing, because he's like, you could see that as he's used to wearing a mask, and God, you got to mouth breathe in a mask. You can't get enough air with your nose. But he's just like this dead eye slouch mouth breathing stare. While he's like, oh God,
he's
I
not
love
stupid.
him in this.
He's very calculating. He obviously is too cocky and underestimates. I love all of his characterization, but the acting is really, really good because I did not recognize him at first. I was like, I thought it was the guy who played Riley in Midnight Mass was my immediate thought.
Before
and then
he took off the mask, I thought, is it going to be Riley?
Yeah. And then I saw the face and I was like, that's not quite right, but I definitely kind of know this guy. And then when I found out who it was, I was like, you're absolutely boiling my brain right now. That's absurd. Because I legitimately, this guy isn't in a lot of things, honestly, especially not a lot that I've seen. So I was shocked by the range. Honestly, he's really good as this killer.
He does a fantastic job. He's super creepy, and I love the balance between like him and Maddie, where she is a person that is very calculating and that she sees kind of the different endings and potentials that can play out and that can happen. Whereas he is kind of analyzing the situation from like a hunter's perspective, and trying to kind of like trap prey, but he's making like a huge mistake of like toying with his prey a lot.
Yeah. That's another thing Kate Siegel had mentioned, is that his ableism in this movie is assuming that because he can hear, he is automatically better than her.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that he dies, is he just assumes he's better.
Yeah, he just underestimates.
There's a specific fuck up he made that made me like laugh out loud in like one of the last scenes where he is sitting behind her in a room and he's talking to himself and he like chuckles and he exhales hard enough that she feels it on the back of her neck. And I'm like, you motherfucking idiot. I was so... Oh God, what a good scene. I loved the choreography of her spinning around to get him as he tried to like lunge forward and get her.
Yeah. It was lucky that he went to stab her right shoulder rather than anywhere else that would be deadly.
Yeah, I kinda,
she does get
pretty
lucky.
Honestly.
Fair enough.
I feel like it just doesn't work as well as it should. But
the whole movie is kind of like goofy in certain places.
Yeah, throughout it's always just like that far off from what makes the most sense.
Yeah, right? Like a lot of the stuff with kind of the crossbow. I love the crossbow as a weapon idea. That's great.
Honestly, the moment
he only actually hits his target like twice. Because he hits her in the thigh and he hits Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's a lot of shots of him narrowly missing, which are fun.
Yeah.
But still, it's a lot of like, if she had just been a lot of it does come down to Maddie being a little lucky, or just the killer being cocky in a way that is different from what I think is intended. Because he does just do some stupid shit, a lot.
He starts with a crossbow. And then she, unarmed, manages to take the crossbow from him. He's fucking stupid. If you start with that much of an advantage and you manage to not only lose it, but to hand it to her, come on now. At that point, he deserved to just let her shoot him.
And then the other way around, there's a moment where because Maddie makes a distraction to the person who is trying to help her, she ends up giving the killer enough of an opening for him to actually get the upper hand on that person who's there to help, which is kind of the other way around, where it's like that situation was kind of already handled, and the killer even goes out of his way to say multiple times that he definitely would have lost that scenario if Maddie hadn't made that move. So it's a really interesting, like, things like that just do happen in real life, so I get it, but they happen a lot in this movie.
It was sad that the guy died, the neighbor boy.
Neighbor boy, he was doing his best.
He suspected he had a rock. He was about to go and wreck this boy.
He knew something was
Yeah,
going
that-
on.
And Maddie
would've been
just
it.
bangs on the glass, making a bunch of noise and distracting him. And then, gosh, it was
The
just so
man.
quick.
It was.
The bad guy just stabbing him in the neck really quick
Yeah.
and then just like jumping away. It was so sad. Poor boy.
I love his character so much. This is one of my point at the movie moments is there's a multiple page document about this guy's backstory that is only known to him, Mike, and Kate, because Mike
Yeah.
and Kate wrote this movie together.
Yeah.
And they gave him his backstory and they're like, this is who you are. No one else gets to know this, but this is who you are. And that's
Yeah.
why he acted so intentionally like who he was.
Mm-hmm.
There's a moment where you get to see the tally marks on his crossbow.
Yeah.
And there's like a couple that are separated from everything else. There's a short one, and there's like two different completed like sets of 5.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have hypothesized that the short one is maybe someone who is like older or sick or a child, maybe. Maybe the ones off on their own or like these are special ones to be remembered differently, things like that. But it's like, this is how many people that this guy has killed. Just like going around, I was like, I'm going to kill somebody today.
It's what, like 13 marks total?
How many?
Like 13, I think?
Yeah, it is 13.
I think so, yeah.
It's
This is a
wild.
reference to the number of letters in the word midnight mass.
Oh my
Don't
god.
say
I thought you were going to say in the word hush, just to be dumb.
Damn it, midnight mass has one more letter.
Damn.
Dang.
Well,
So close.
Well, he did manage to get another victim before handing the crossbow over, so...
True.
That's true. But did he actually have time to mark down Sarah?
No, I don't think he did, no.
No.
So
if
that's
he
15
had...
letters. And unless we're counting the space between midnight and mass, like, we're in a bad zone.
Bummer.
Yeah. I think he was potentially cop or ex-military.
He seems
Most
like
likely
it.
cop.
He...
Um,
Okay.
He does have cop vibes.
I thought
You know,
he
he
had like kicked out of the military vibes personally, but
I
He
was
does
gonna
have kicked
say
out of the
that.
military
maybe
vibes.
it's just because
Not
I've
to-
hung around more with kicked out of the military people than I have with cops. I don't know. It might just be that's more what I'm familiar
No, I think
with.
this guy's vibes are identical to the guy you're talking
Okay, good, because
about. It's not just you.
I thought this guy just felt too fucking familiar. God, I'm so tired of seeing him in movies that I watch.
Right.
Jesus.
Watching a movie with just a fucking deadbeat piece of shit. God, he's
Oh,
back.
he's everywhere. Spring was a rough one because of that, but
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. This is the problem with Hush, right? Like, there's not as much to talk
It's
about.
just-
It's a cool movie.
it's all vibes.
It's a fun
is the
movie.
thing.
Yeah.
I've said everything I
Yeah,
have
I've
to say.
got-
The
yeah,
vibes are
that's-
good. Oh,
What
here's an
music is in
important
it is
fact.
good. That's it. Like,
Yeah. The choice to do the ultrasound noise when we go into the deaf world where we just can't hear
The
things
deaf
rather than
world.
dead silence was kind of nice because shut up, leave me alone. It's 9 p.m. I've worked all day.
This is just a really funny sentence to say.
But it's nice to get that
Yeah.
instead of dead silence in a movie where we just don't have a lot of sound happening. It's nice to have something.
Okay, I have one thing I want to say. I liked the scenes where Maddie wrote on the mirror on the window to communicate with him. I thought that was really
neat,
fun, and I think between the way that she talked to him when she did that and the fact that he catches her cat, turns over the tag, and it just says "bitch" are some of my favorite.
it's real good.
yeah.
I love what he knows of this woman is that she's just like bullying him
Yeah.
every chance that she
Like,
gets.
The ending of the movie happens with her putting on the fucking door, "Come and get me, coward."
Yeah. And that's after
She's like,
he
"Fine,
fucks
do
up her
it."
hand and shoots her and shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and she's like, "Yeah, you gonna end it or not?"
She's like, what's taking you so long? This isn't a cat and mouse game. You're just scared, you little bitch. She named her cat bitch. I also love a 10 out of 10 characterization. I love Maddie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. 1000%.
Are we ready to move forward then?
Well, do we have any
do we want to go through
notes
Noah's
for
notes?
Oh, I was thinking we would do the notes in a lump sum at the end.
I want to do the notes movie at a time. It makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
All right,
it's incredibly short, so I'm going to read as many as are good.
There's not that many notes here.
One.
Noah says...
Do I hear half a note?
One, half a note, one, half a note. Give me one, half a note, one, half a note.
Oh my God. Noah says... I should look into how accurate the sign language is in this. He says, as I am Googling like opinions from the deaf community, like early on in the movie, and immediately he adds in parentheses, not accurate, apparently. Within the first 5 minutes, I was like, you know what? If I'm not going to wait till the movie's done to like look this up. I want to watch it with that information in my mind. And I'm glad that I did, because I think that helped me both like know what I was looking at and not wonder in every scene if it was good representation or not, because I already knew it's like not.
Yeah.
But it did bring the movie down a half star for me. It bummed me out to know that it was terrible representation, but also as soon as I learned it, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Actually.
Yeah. But if it had been good representation, this movie would have been like an 8 or a 9. Just because it's fun and it's like it's a positive for the deaf community as well, which is important. But anyway, so I looked that up pretty early on, and it was really funny that Noah was like having the same thought process as me. Noah says that soulless blank face, his annoyance that Maddie can't hear him while he was standing behind her with the knife. Very good. I think it's very funny that initially it does seem like annoyance, and then it's slowly like he's like, she's not looking at me. Why isn't she looking at me? I want to be scary. And then it slowly morphs into, okay,
I can
something's
do something
up
else
here.
With this.
And then immediately goes into, I can be a dick about this. Noah says, every time I watch this movie, I'm reminded that I need to learn ASL because it's like a base level decent thing to do. I think about that a lot. Yeah. We have a lot of deaf customers come into work. And while I have like scrap paper and I'm able to like manage enough, I'm always disappointed in myself every time that it happens that I like haven't taken the time to do that yet.
ASL and Spanish are two things that I really wish that I'd taken more seriously.
Yeah.
I feel like
it's never
way
too
better
late.
Off with where I'm at.
I always feel like
late. I'm set in my ways.
I always feel like a dick with Spanish because I understand it really well, but I also have a lot of anxiety around speaking it. So when people are talking to me in Spanish at work, or they're talking to each other in Spanish in front of me, I do this when people speak English to each other too, is I'll just enter the order as they're talking to each other rather than wait for the person who's like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to have a mocha. I'll just like add in the mocha while they're talking. I do that when people speak in Spanish as well, but I don't give any indication that I know what's going on. And I feel really bad about it because like I understand Spanish well enough that it is reflex for me to just like go and do it. But I forget to make that common knowledge. But yeah,
Counter,
I do
that's
want to learn.
really funny.
Huh?
Counter, that's really funny. Imagine you're having a conversation with somebody as you approach the counter about what you're going to order, and you don't think the person behind the counter is like even going to understand what you're saying. Then you get there and you go to make your order, and they're just like, "No, I got it."
They're just like $5.
Like, what? Did you hear everything? I think that's funny, but.
Yeah, it's I think a couple regulars have like picked up on it, but because we have one guy who always gets the same thing, but we also like he always is like in Spanish to his friend, he's like, what is it called when it's like not as like burnt tasting was kind of the way that he phrased it in Spanish, and I said aloud in English, oh, you want a light roast. So I really gotta actually like start practicing speaking my Spanic because
like,
it's getting embarrassing.
Light roast. And he's like, yeah.
That's not even close to correct.
Yes.
C.
Do you speak light roast?
Do you speak? Yes, I speak light roast. Anyway. You didn't even conjugate it right. Anyway. Anyway, the whole thing to say ASL is really important, and I really should like get on that.
There was but the last place I lived, a couple blocks away, one of the only like Starbucks in the country that's staffed by the deaf community was right by me. Cool. And I really loved going there. It was a really cool spot, and it's very quiet, and so it's nice to just kind of like sit in line, and like there's not the usual like chaos of most coffee shops and like noise. It's just a very chill experience. Everybody was super, super nice. They had these little like digital chalkboards basically that you could write your order on if you didn't sign.
Oh, neat.
And I really loved supporting them, and I wanted to like try to learn ASL better, so I could practice and like go there and participate. But then we moved. So
damn,
I wasn't able to.
Yeah, Noah has this in his notes, so I'll get onto that. I think it's really interesting kind of the way that certain disabilities can like shape your perception of the world and of how you interact with it. I remember reading stories on Tumblr of the student who had a blind professor, and she went into his office hours to take a makeup test, and she was sitting there doing this makeup test in the dark for like 20 minutes, and then suddenly he goes, "Oh my God, you can see," and like launches across the room to turn the lights on for her. Or like certain things with me where one of my readers was like, "Oh, you wrote Quincy to have EDS, right?" And I'm like, no. And then I'm going back and reading the book, and there are certain things that she does that to me are just normal things for my self-insert to do. But if you have EDS and you're like reading it and you know that the writer has EDS, you can pick up on like, oh, you know, I do this thing every morning where I stretch and my like shoulders pop back into socket before I go on with my day. And Quincy also does that. So if you know what to look for, it's like, oh yeah. So it's like, there are certain things that like, you don't even think about. And Noah has this in here. Noah's like criticism in mind, obviously. I really enjoy what this what this movie does with this character, because from a hearing perspective, I know how much noise Maddie is making. I hear her moving around on the roof. I hear her making way more noise than like is advisable in that situation. It makes me afraid for her. She can handle herself, but still like she doesn't know how much noise she's making. And The Quiet Place kind of does this as well, in certain scenarios where like there's noise being made, or there's a situation where a character might not know that they're making noise, with the I already forgot her name, but the daughter character that like would stress me out in that same way. Millicent, yeah.
I don't know her character name.
Me neither. But yeah, no, I think that that's another really interesting point. But yeah, that's it for Noah's notes. That was actually the last, like, and I think there was one more, but I don't think it was like super.
It's literally just fucked up hands, let's go.
Well, of course.
Fucked up hand, let's go.
Fucked up hand, let's go.
Oh, what was the fucked up hand in this movie? Do we want to tell the audience just in case?
She is trying to reach out onto the patio to grab the crossbow bolt that she dropped on her way back in after distracting the man from killing her cat. And she reaches out to get it, and the guy comes up and slams her hand in the sliding door. Yeah. And it's stuck there, and then he stomps on her hand.
Mangles it.
Yeah.
And it fucks up her hand
the
real
amount
bad.
of adrenaline that Maddie must be feeling. I think, okay, so when we start to talk about Gerald's game, which we can do at any point here, I guess, there's a lot of actual like parallels, and this happens a lot with Noah and I, where we're like, let's watch two movies back to back, and then they turn out to be like a really good like parallel to each other.
Ghost Ship and Event Horizon, Hush and Gerald's Game.
Yeah. Lara Croft in Resident Evil was on purpose.
Yeah, that was we
intentional. But yeah, with this one, it's like the parallels of the heroines being worried about they're kind of, for lack of a better term, like status effects of like dehydration and blood loss, and like kind of keeping mental track of the things that they need to do to just keep themselves moving throughout the movie. I think is a really interesting that that's mirrored, and also like being trapped and also having voices that are kind of coaching them through things, whether they be like manifestations of personalities like that they are like familiar with that are kind of coaching them through things, or if it's like Maddie's like writer brain, quote unquote. Like, it's really interesting, like kind of there are very similar like storytelling beats in both of them. That like I didn't expect until we got into Gerald's game, and I started being like, oh, like these stories are kind of similar in a lot of ways that I was not like thinking they would be.
I hadn't looked at it that way. That's actually really cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know what's not really cool?
A good like
what happens
Gerald's game.
A good of like 80% of Gerald's
I know
game.
you are all sitting here on the edge of your seats wondering, but Noah, you mentioned the kinky sex movie, and all you're doing is talking about the Deaf Girl movie.
And after
Firstly,
the Hellraiser
it's kinda shitty of
episodes,
you,
I thought
actually.
this was
Like,
a
come on now.
podcast that liked kinky sex movies.
Exactly. We've set a bar. We love dicks. We love dongs. We love kinky sex. Not this one.
Do we though?
Not all of us. In fact, I wouldn't even go so far as to say not all of us, but it is something that we have talked about and there is precedence for, and Jeff is dying.
I'm okay.
I'm realizing I separated dicks and dongs,
That's
and I
what's
don't
really
actually know what the
getting me,
distinction
is
is,
what-
but they
what
are
is the
different things.
distinction?
They are. Gerald is a dick who has a dog.
That's not no, that wasn't my distinction. Anyway, Gerald's game. So here's what happens, okay? And I can give a better summary of this one because they talk in this one, and it's so much easier to give a summary of a movie that they talk because I can riff off that. Here we go. So Gerald's game. After Gerald chains Jesse to the bed with like handcuffs, which I feel like this is one of those things that's like a semi well-known thing. Like, obviously, when you use stuff like that, it has to have an emergency release.
You would
just
think
for
that's
safety
something
reasons.
everyone would
Yeah,
think of,
so
right? That's something I was talking about in the
really
Hell
quick.
House episode too.
Really quick, a lot of my problem with this movie is that it's not even a problem with this movie. It's a problem with how a lot of movies handle like BDSM in general.
absolutely.
Is like, and it's like in this movie, the characters, and there is precedence for this, like in their characterization. So I accept that this is something that is intentional and part of their characterization. The characters do not talk about their expectations, the scene that they are going to be doing, the props that they are going to be using in the scene, their past traumas that might make the scene hard to play out. They do not talk about any of this. They do not have any like safety rules in place to stop the scene if need be. They just literally do not do any of the things that you are supposed to do for like healthy like role play like that. He did not warn her for anything. She didn't tell him that this was something that might even like kind of be a problem, which is something that like no matter what role play they were doing, if there were handcuffs involved, even fun play ones, there were things that she might have thought to bring up to him. And then definitely do not use real handcuffs for reasons that will be made clear momentarily.
I put this down as a note later, but I wrote, I can't imagine being married to someone for 11 years and not at all talking about what you're into with your partner.
Right?
Or
Well,
like
she
anything.
mentioned that she had no idea he had this kink.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine they've explored other kinks he has, but this is just one he's been ashamed
Well,
of and hidden until this moment where
I
he
gotta
just
be
springs it
honest,
on
like
her.
this is like it feels really base level is the problem. It's like, this is like step 1, step 2. He's like barely past step 1. And she's like, this man's so fucked up.
The specific scenario
Isn't the problem.
Yeah, the specific scenario is a lot more extreme than the initial implication is.
But also, like, the specific role play that he's doing isn't really the entire issue. It's more just that, like, he didn't clear anything with her beforehand.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
I wrote... Part of the thing I wrote is like, this book was put out in 92 is when this story was released.
Yeah, okay.
And I feel like, with that in mind, I'm like, oh, you know what? That makes a little bit more
sense.
sense.
It's a product of its time.
You know,
100%.
people who got married in the 80s, I guess they probably wouldn't talk about stuff, especially if Gerald is a businessman. Anyway, back to the story. All right, so here's the spoiler synopsis. Gerald drops fucking dead. And he's like on the bed. She gives him a little kick to try and wake him up and kicks him off the bed and cracks his head open on the floor.
Yep.
And I love this part so much. Like the tension in this front half when she realizes she kicked him onto the floor, he's not moving. It's really wicked. The dog comes in because they left the door open because Gerald was so horny that he couldn't close the door. He's like, let's go. Dog comes in, starts to chew on Gerald, and she's having a bad time with this, and then Gerald gets up. Or does he?
Dun, dun, dun.
We're entering into the hallucinatory section. He did not get up, in fact. Gerald is a figment of her imagination. We have Gerald and Jesse, too, who are the people that we bounce most of this story off of for the rest of the movie. Gerald is everything she thinks she knows about her husband, all of her memories about her husband and things like that. And Jessie, too, is her just being real mean to herself and trying to be real realistic. And Gerald also is really mean to her. It is worth noting that both her fictional husband and her fictional self are both like, dude.
Jessie, too, in the way that she's styled, is like Jessie's ideal version of herself.
That's the
because Jessie, too, is able to easily break out of where the real Jessie is. Her hair is like ethereally styled the whole
it's so
time.
great. Her hair, like, she looks perfect the entire movie as Jessie looks worse and worse.
Yeah, so she's got her ideal
as she
self.
should. She's locked up in a bed.
Her ideal self and the way she remembers her husband being, and the two are just bullying her relentlessly as she's chained to the bed.
Over the course of this, Gerald has her locked up. He wants to do some like, I don't know, word content warning. He wants to do like some weird rape play shit.
Yeah, he has her like call for help and everything.
Yeah, and he does some like, daddy doesn't like this. And that's like what tips her off initially, where she's like, hey, stop, hard stop. Which unfortunately is where we get into the meat and potatoes of this movie. Sometimes we do content warnings and the content warning is dong, ha ha ha. And there's like 2 seconds where there's just a big floppy penis on screen or an exploding penis on screen, something like that, funny
the
things,
basics.
ha ha. So when I say the content warnings for this movie are incest and sexual assault, this is the movie. This is the movie. It's not just like, this is not a light content warning. That's what the movie is about.
Kinda, yeah.
Because unfortunately, back when Jessie was a kid, they went out to the lake, her whole family, I think her stepmom?
No, it's her mom.
Maybe?
Just her mom.
It's her mom? Okay. They have a bad relationship. Yeah. I thought it was a step relationship because of that. Where she doesn't feel like going out on the boat that they have chartered to look at the full solar eclipse. So she stays on the shore with her dad, and he has her sit on his lap and jerks off. And this scene is very long. I kept remembering it cutting away from this scene, and it really doesn't.
No, it doesn't. No.
Not a fan. And as it flashes back to present day, fake Gerald's like, oh, Jessie, I had no idea. And she's like, yeah, I know. I didn't tell you because, and then it flashes back again with her dad making her to promise to never tell anyone because if she doesn't say something now and, oh God, if we say something, it'll ruin my marriage with your mother. Oh, this is so terrible.
And things have
this
already
is the
been
worst.
rough between the two of you. It's going to be terrible, but we've got to do it. And if we don't,
and
then
he
we
makes
can
it
never
clear that
say
if you don't
anything
now,
ever again.
And that's how she's held on to it her whole life. And, you know, she married an older man, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, that's the story that plays out in the movie. That's the whole story that plays out. There's also this subplot with this weird necrophiliac tall guy who's raiding graveyards in the area
and breaking into houses
and like steals. Yeah, does he steal like Gerald's finger or something?
He steals
or earlobes.
He steals wedding rings and small bones.
But off of Gerald, I believe he takes like a finger or his ear or something, and everyone like wrote it off as the dog ate it. But later in the story, Jesse's like, yeah, I realize it was the Moonlight Man because she sees him and assumes he's a hallucination, and she sees her
he's death.
And is so weirded out by her that he doesn't kill her because she gives him her wedding ring as penance.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of seems like
he's kind of just shocked silent about it.
Yeah, it kind of seems like he's entertained by her at first and then like just too interested to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like from what you learn about him, he's much more interested in men.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's part of it as well.
Classic problematic Stephen King. The bad guy is gay.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, you hear him talk later on and learn a little bit more about him, and he seems to have some mental issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I
played
think
by Grandpa in the True
He's
Knot.
played by Grandpa Flick. Yeah.
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 I think because she was out of it, and when she finally escaped the handcuffs and he's kind of standing in the hallway, this is as she like gives him her ring as like penance, because she thinks he's death, and so she's like giving him something to let her go.
Mm-hmm.
But she says like, you're not real, you're made of moonlight and all this stuff, and it's very like mythological, it's very and I think it feeds into kind of this perception he has of himself a little bit, of being like this very like mystical kind of otherworldly person-ish.
Yeah.
So I think he really enjoyed that, which is part of why he was like, yeah, I'm not, you can leave.
Yeah.
Sure.
Very, very much
Moonlight.
like if this is what you're going to tell people that I am, I want people to know that. And the only way they're going to know, like all this subconscious, of course, the only way they're going to know that is if you're out there saying it, which is why her last line in the movie after she gets out and sees him in person is to say, you're a lot smaller than I remember, which is to
deflates him like a fucking
deflate
balloon.
him. And with that, all of these men who like, because as she walks towards him, we see it kind of flash between her dad and Gerald and the fucking Moonlight Man. And it's very clear that like, this is her kind of dismantling all of them at once. And we have mentioned that she gives him the wedding ring when she escapes. We haven't mentioned how she escapes.
I haven't gotten that far yet.
Oh,
Sorry.
well, we mentioned the wedding ring twice.
Can I just real quick while we're talking about the Moonlight Man still? The actor who plays him, the same actor who plays Grandpa Flick in Dr. Sleep, his name is Karel Shoikin, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It is stated at the end of the movie that the Moonlight Man has a disorder called acromegaly. Karel Shoikin actually has that. So tying into the authenticity thing from Hush.
Yeah.
Rather than just using like a makeup effects and having Doug Jones do it or something, they found a guy who actually has the thing.
Yeah, this guy, Doug Jones, Javier Botep, there are, respectfully, the fucked up weird guys that play the monsters.
Yeah.
Because they're just like
because they have
big,
the abilities to
they can look and move
in ways that are interesting.
Also, this guy Karel had a running part on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh,
he was a consistent guest star. He played Mr. Home.
No, you know what? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
I didn't know that until I was looking at his stuff today.
This is like when your dad was like, oh, fucking the guy in Hellraiser is in Deep Space Nine as one of the Cardassians. And I'm like, the fuck? Shut up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Doug Bradley?
Speaking of the dad character.
Oh, okay. Well, you know who else was in Star Trek a good bit, actually? Tony Todd, Candyman.
Yeah,
He was a Klingon consistently.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
no,
brother.
100%. Oh my god,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my god, it's all coming together.
Anyways.
Anyway, I had wanted to talk about something with Hellraiser, but we can do that later.
So the end of the movie.
Oh, right.
As we get all these flashbacks, Jessie tries to make peace with herself over the course of things. And each flashback, its purpose is telling her what in the room can help her. Why is it she remembers so many different things? Why is it that different things are coming to mind? And it's because these memories are the way that she's going to get out. The way that she gets out is she breaks a glass, cuts her wrist, degloves her hand, pulling it through the handcuffs with probably the most fucked up hand of all of Flanagan's fucked up hands.
I don't think that's a probably. I think it is the most fucked up hand.
So far.
We see muscles.
We see tendons.
It's rough.
And bone.
And bone. She gets out. She breaks off the other bedpost so that she can go wrap her arm up, call the police, and book it out of there to the car so that she can try to get as close to society again as possible. That's when she hands the ring to Moonlight Man. And then we flash forward to the future. The future where she's writing a letter to her past self about like getting over things. She has now, because of this happening to her, she is using her past traumas to try and help other people. She tells the story about her gross ass pervert dad to try and help people be like, hey, I know where you're coming from. This was my childhood. It gets better kind of stuff. And then she sees in the paper that some weird old dude has been desecrating graves and was caught because he moved on to real living people and got yoinked. She sees him in the courtroom. She comes up behind him and interrupts the court, which she should be arrested for. You can't interrupt the
She
court.
would absolutely get arrested for that. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think she'd get that far into it, like strutting down the hall like that. If
Oh,
we're being
the moment
honest.
she walked through that little gate, they would have cuffed her. Yeah.
But Moonlight Man turns around, breaks all his handcuffs, putting his arms out like, hey, how you doing? And then he just repeats back because he has not spoken a word since he was captured. And he just says, you're not real. You're made of moonlight. And she looks at him and says, yeah, you're shorter than I imagined or than I remembered, and leaves. And he is devastated and goes to prison for the rest of his life, I assume.
Probably.
Yeah.
I hope. It's a fucked up little dude.
He's a fucked up big dude.
And that's the end of the
actually.
movie.
He's a fucked
Yes,
up,
he
very
is.
large man.
He is a very large man.
So
I love
many
him. I love
people
his
who
performance.
are...
He's good.
yeah.
He specifically is one of the best parts of this movie, I think. But
I don't like the character.
no, the
but I
character
think he was
has
played
major,
well.
major problems. I love the way he
I wish the
plays him, though.
character. I wish the character had not been there. I think it undermines what could have otherwise been a fairly grounded story. I think having him there kind of like messes with that a little
It's a bit
bit.
weird.
It's the kingism. It's the most king thing ever, and anyone else, I think, would have removed that character. But Flanagan was making an audition for "Please let me adapt
Dr.
Dr. Sleep."
Right.
You know, I think we had to have the tall, fucked up man because he could not have the house on a native burial ground. He's like, a vacation home on a native burial site? Unrealistic.
And aliens
Tall guy.
doesn't work.
Tall
aliens
guy.
don't work. Evil house, done it before.
Evil room, done it twice.
Evil dog, we'll put in a dog, but like...
So one thing that people who like the book and the story, I should say is that the end of this movie sucks. Because in this movie, Flanagan has twisted it into a triumphant moment for Jessie. Whereas in the book, it's more of the like horrifying realization that, yeah, everything that happened was real and so was this guy. Which is why Brian Tellerico, writer for Ebert, says the last 10 minutes are so bad.
Is that why he said that?
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
I would assume because he is a fan of the story, and many fans of the story say the end of the movie is bad. It is a pretty consistent vibe from those people, but other people are like, actually, I like the change to the story. I like that we have a triumphant moment that doesn't hate women in this movie.
Yeah,
So,
I thought the ending was the most like comfortable part.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the movie was very uncomfortable.
I don't think that's a fair assumption to make about the why Brian Tallarico made that statement, though, because I don't think it fits with, like, it's a short review, but I don't think that fits with the rest of it.
I'll go find his full review so I can find out while you talk.
Okay. That's, like, from what I read, that I don't think that you can make an assumption from what we read that it's specifically because he thought that it was not a faithful adaptation to the last 10 minutes, and that's why it was, or that it changed the vibes of the last 10 minutes, and that's why it was a bad 10 minutes. But anyway, it is a bad last 10 minutes either way, in my opinion, because it definitely is the most comfy part of the movie, but it also is, I think the movie just kind of goes on too long at that point. I think it makes the character feel more tacked on to have her get out, and everything with her seems kind of like fixed and locked up, and then we go on a 10-minute monologue about this character that was briefly in the movie, and we get his entire backstory.
Yeah, that was really weird.
In that like little monologue, and then we wrap him up.
Brian hates the end of this movie because he hates the end of the story too.
See,
he just thinks that the ending concept is bad.
Consistent.
That's what I kind of, the vibes that I got from what the end of his short review was. I was like, I don't think that his problem is that it's it changes the vibes. I think his problem is probably just that the last 10 minutes suck. And that, because he says that in that he literally said, in that sense, it's maybe the most like faithful King adaptation ever, which to me reads, the ending to this story sucks. And that's everyone involved's fault.
He likes the changes that Flanagan made, saying it's the best he probably could have done working within King's work.
Yeah, so I agree with that, personally. So Brian Tallarico, good ending. I don't know this guy, but same bestie. Okay. Can I talk briefly about Hellraiser versus Gerald's game? We brought it up earlier. I think people talk about how Hellraiser, addresses kink and such in a way that's really interesting, and I think is a really interesting exploration of like the different kind of desires that can lead to kink, and the different kind of like the way that people who enjoy that are perceived by the greater populace in the Cenobites. And to me, in Gerald's game, it's another example of what normal people think kink is, but it's written by one of the people who thinks kink is like that. Yeah. Very similar to like 50 Shades of Grey, where it's like you see this and you're like, damn, people who are kinky are really fucked up in the way that like, Gerald is portrayed as kind of being really fucked up. And it's like, okay, yes, Gerald and Christian Grey are both fucked up in the way that they use kink, potentially. I think Gerald mostly fucked up in not talking to his wife. But that's not what it actually is, and stuff like Gerald's game and 50 Shades of Grey being two of the most popularly like well-known stories about kink is kind of the worst and drives me fucking batty, honestly.
Nina, what are some other stories about kink you would recommend?
See, that's the problem, isn't it? Because I think one is I think it's called The Secretary. It has James Spader in it. And it's very similar to 50 Shades of Grey. It's about a boss and his secretary becoming involved in a BDSM relationship. But to my understanding, because I have not seen it, but I have seen other people who hated 50 Shades of Grey and how it portrayed kink talk about this movie. It does the story with a lot more realism to the kind of conversations that actually need to take place for two consenting parties with a power dynamic like that to actually engage in a relationship like that.
Cool.
So that is the main one, I would think, that I would say. But other than that, I would say if you're looking for BDSM stories or if you're interested in that lifestyle, probably look into those communities and see what kind of rules people have found work and have found usually prevent things like Gerald's game from happening. There's a lot of like subreddits and stuff about it that are actually really like healthy and informative. So, do your research basically so you don't end up like Jesse.
Because there's a moment in Gerald's game where she's like, Gerald, uncuff me so we can talk about this. And he just says, well, what if I don't?
Yeah,
you don't want to be in
that.
that. No, you don't want that.
No,
you don't want to be in that situation.
If you're ever in a
all.
relationship with someone like that, like run.
And like
there's a lot of stuff with him.
Yeah, and like we get a lot of in the the brief period at the front of the movie where Gerald is still alive. We get a significant handful of red flags. You get the impression very quickly that he's just a piece of shit. That's kind
like
of just
the
how
moment when
it
she
is.
feeds the Wagyu to the dog.
Yeah, it's Kobe
Or not,
actually.
the
and
Kobe
it's
beef.
from
I'm sorry, the Kobe beef.
and it's like $200 a portion or whatever the number he said
Wow,
was.
you would only know that if
Yep.
he reiterated it at length to make her feel bad and then said, no, but you shouldn't feel
just
bad.
let him have it. It'll be the best thing he's ever eaten.
And that's when he leaves the door
Until
open.
later.
So true. That's when he leaves the door open on his way inside and says, here, let's go inside. Maybe some snacks, maybe some champagne. Let's go to the bedroom.
And he just leaves
speed
the
runs them to
door
the bedroom.
open. That's kind of where most of the movie falls apart for me. Is the door getting left open. What the hell? Who does that?
He's so horny, though.
He already took his Viagra.
He did.
But like, I don't know. I mean, like in the I sent a message to the host chat in our Discord earlier saying that I had found a new like stupid little detail in like the opening shot of the movie.
Oh my God, yeah.
So
It's
excited.
a red flag about Gerald, literally. Okay, the first shot of the movie is just that like top-down overhead shot of Jessie like packing her bag, and we see her like laying dresses out on the bed and then folding up and packing everything up. We see her like preparing things. She's clearly putting thought into like, what they're going to be doing on this trip during the conservative 90% of it that they're not going to be actively fucking, Gerald. We get immediately after we get a shot of him packing his bag, and all we see is him like laying this like blanket over top of everything else that he has packed, obscuring everything. And then he sets the handcuffs down on top of that. So what we get from that shot kind of symbolically is that like she's putting a ton of thought into like how she's going to try and use this trip to actually try and fix what's wrong with their relationship. She's thinking about what's going to be happening the entire rest of the time. Whereas for him, this is just the sex trip. That's all they're doing for him. That's all that any of this is. That's as much thought as he's putting into any of it.
Yeah. I think this is a great time for us to do a segment where we just all share our kinks. I'll go
So
last.
true. Fair and valid. Jeff, you can go first.
What?
My kink is I love a businessman who cares for business things.
What?
I don't know. It's
Totally.
a note that I wrote down here, and I don't know why I wrote it.
I was just trying to think of
Incredible.
like what's the funniest kink that I could say, but then I was like, no matter what I say, that's only ever going to get turned against me. I can't make this a joke
Yeah,
without
What's
it
that
being
joke?
something
You
that I
have a
just
fart
get
kink?
hit with.
Wow, that's funny.
Gosh, yeah. This movie, as someone who's asexual, was very uncomfortable.
Could imagine, yeah.
It's-
Because, like,
It's
for
weird,
one, I'm
right?
just like, I don't think I would ever trust anyone to handcuff me to
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to hear about how it could have been worse if this movie was just a little bit more faithful to the book?
sure,
In the book,
yeah,
she
let's hear
has her
about
boobs
that.
out the entire time.
Oh,
It
great.
could have been a little
Oh,
worse.
cool. It could
Thanks,
have been a lot
Steven.
I
worse.
thought in the
Thank
book
you,
she was
Steven.
like
We really
butt ass
appreciate
naked.
that.
So yeah,
Thanks, Stephen. Fuck, I hate Stephen. He loves to describe women's bodies, and I hate him so much because it's never, God, I don't remember if I talked about this in The Shining, but I vividly remember how he describes the woman in the bathtub.
Oh.
And it's not great, either mostly the before she turns out to be an undead.
Right.
Ghost,
just very,
like, rotting thing.
I'm assuming incredibly disrespectful.
Yeah, it's just really hones in on things that are like, yeah, sometimes the way that I read Stephen King's women, I'm like, Steve, do you even like women's bodies very much?
Oh.
Because you're getting into grotesque detail about things in the same way that you do in your horror scenes.
H.P. Lovecraft. Hold on. You know what's terrifying?
There's just a lot of focus put on details that women typically try to change or hide about themselves to make themselves more appealing. Specifically, body hair in the Shining scene that I'm thinking about. He puts a lot of emphasis onto how her body hair is floating in the tub and stuff.
That's odd. Weird
it's just really interesting the way that he describes like just women's bodies. I don't know. I don't want to diagnose anything or anyone.
I diagnose him with hating women.
Have never really enjoyed it. It's always made me as a woman very uncomfortable. And that's not to say he doesn't do the same thing with men's bodies. I feel like I've maybe read a scene where he's had a really unflattering description for a dong. But I don't remember. I just had that one scene burned in my memory.
It's one of those things that like it really confuses me about Mike Flanagan's love of Stephen King, because like when we look at Mike Flanagan's stories, they are overwhelmingly, if not like almost exclusively, stories about women.
Okay.
And he tends to treat his women a touch better than Stephen King treats his, right?
Because it's a nice, gentle way to put it.
I think I get it. I think I do get it. I feel like I shit on, I know for a fact that I shit on Stephen King a lot. Yeah. But, there's a lot of really good fantasy writers who take a lot of their cues from Tolkien, per se. Like I think it's part of just how storytelling evolves is taking your cues from the people who came before you and identifying what you like and what you didn't, and then getting rid of what you didn't like. Because if I think of I love Brandon Sanderson's writings. A lot of Sanderson's protagonists are very well-written women. He does have his tropes that he falls into sometimes, but they're not harmful tropes. And then you can tell that he's got a lot of his influence from people like Tolkien, who had women as an afterthought. So to see we go from Tolkien, where there are no women in The Hobbit and 2, 3 in Lord of the Rings. Yeah. And then we move to Sanderson, who writes a lot of women characters who are smart and strong and confident and competent. And it's we can see you like this thing, but you know that it's not perfect. And I feel like I get that with Flanagan and King, where it's even his adaptations of King's work try to fix those things. It's not even that his own stories fix the problems with the genre. He even goes so far as to kind of tweak King's work to make it less awful. So I think it's that he's self-aware, but there are things to like in King. There's his concepts and his the conceit of Gerald's game is fun. That's why I put it on in the first place, because I watched this movie when I was in college. I remember watching it on the computer monitor that my roommate and I used as a TV. But the concepts are fun and draw you in. But King has a lot of issues, not just with the problematic way that he writes, but also with the way that he always falls short on exploring concepts, in my opinion. He always just gets bored with the original concept that he came up with and is what if there were aliens or a serial killer or
what if there was something
else
weird
that made
happening here?
So, that's my tirade about I forgive Mike Flanagan for liking Stephen King.
Yeah. And Mike Flanagan also grew up in peak Stephen King years.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So,
yeah. It's gotta
that's
have
also a big part of it.
It's gotta have shaped him so much that I look back at stuff that I really think of as influencing my like writing style, and I think to myself, damn, that wasn't actually that great. Anyway.
All right, so
yeah, it's kind of when you like go back to things you loved when you were a kid, and you're like, oh, this is really problematic.
I'm a Marvel Comics fan. I don't know if y'all knew that. But
God, the number of things from my childhood that I've tried to revisit and thought, oh man, I should have just left this one alone. It was great before, and now it's bad.
Me with Lost. Like, I didn't even have nostalgia for Lost, but I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh, heavens. Like, I'm going to have to just ignore parts of this.
I got to be honest, even then, I'm
we were
pretty
mad
sure
at
that
it while it was coming out. We
noticed.
were that was part of being a Lost fan while it was happening, is just being mad at the show.
I was like, damn, they treat Saeed like shit.
Saeed.
Saeed.
Except at the time we were mad that they butchered his character, not because they were being incredibly Islamophobic.
Yeah.
They butchered his character by being Islamophobic.
Well,
anyway, that's another tangent, because we're avoiding talking about Gerald's game.
I would like to get back to not avoiding talking about Gerald's game. I'd like to talk about the stuff that I like in this movie.
I'd love to hear it, because there's a lot that I do like.
There is some good stuff in there.
All of the problems that I have with this movie come directly from the source material. I mean, it was shat directly from the horse's ass. I know Mike didn't put it in there.
Oh, 100%.
Like, it's all just like concept issues. I don't think there is anything in the execution of this movie that is done wrong, other than sticking to the source material in parts. Like, I love the way that this movie is shot. I love the lack of soundtrack, the way that it like heightens the isolation. I love the specific portrayal of the isolation and the tension that it causes. I feel like this movie sits in its tension really, really well. And I love that it's very Stephen King and it's very isolated, but it does not remind me whatsoever of The Shining. Because the isolation in this is so much more immediately desperate. Yeah. Whereas in The Shining, it's kind of bad stuff is happening, but I'm not about to die right this minute from doing nothing, because if I stay in this building, the cold outside that is scaring me will not get me. Whereas in this situation, it's like, well, she can't even move at all. And the windows are open, actually, which, like, you know, if it was more of like a bad weather time of the year, that would be disastrous. I mean, you know, when she wakes up in the morning, everything is damp as hell. It just, I love so much about the way that this shit is done, and I just hate the story.
That's the thing, is there are so many moments in this where I viscerally feel her terror.
Yeah.
Like when she first like is trying to get out and she's panicking. I like, this is such a minor comparison, but it's not, because it's the same feeling, and that's the whole point. When I get stuck in a fucking, this is part of why I don't wear dresses anymore. When I get stuck in a fucking dress and I can't unzip my own dress and I feel like I'm suffocating and going to die, and I'm like trying to unzip it to the point where I'm like, again, EDS stupid shit, dislocating joints, trying to get myself out, and I'm ignoring the pain of my like joints dislocating because I'm literally like hyperventilating trying to get out of this dress. And that was the feeling evoked by like seeing her struggling to try and get out. Is all mental faculties and logic are fucking gone when you're in that situation. You're just not it's like, obviously you can't do that. I even had the thought pretty early on of like, what about those stories where like women have supernatural fucking strength because they're scared? And then literally like 10 minutes later, the character's like, what about when moms like flip cars and shit? And I'm like, yeah, what about?
That's funny.
But yeah,
and
no.
then Gerald's just like, you could never be a mom.
Dude, Jesus Christ, Gerald.
I fucking love the casting of the two of them. Jesse and Gerald being played by Carla Gugino and Bruce Greenwood. The two of them are really, really good.
It's really funny to me that this is the first movie I've watched with Carla Gugino after I've seen Spy Kids, because I had watched Haunting of Hill House.
Oh,
obviously.
Fuck, that's her in Spy Kids?
Jeff just... she's
Shit,
the mom
oh my god.
Yeah, Nina points at the screen and goes, Spy Kids?
What? It's been too long since
And
I
then I
watched
said,
Spy
no,
Kids.
that's Kate Siegel.
Yo, what the hell?
I literally... Noah did have a moment where he thought it was Kate Siegel, but we got past that.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So I was going to say I
past it.
really like her, but I haven't seen her in much. But apparently I've
You've
really
seen her
liked
at
her
least
for a
3.
very long time because I remember having a thing for her when I was a kid. So, all right.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't know who she was when I watched Hill House. I was like, I don't even really like her character that much in Hill House, honestly.
Oh, I liked her in Hill House. I thought she did
She's
the thing that
I
she
don't
does
like
in that show really well.
I think my biggest problem with Hill House is that I relate to one character versus Bly Manor, where I relate to all of them. I think that is like my big difference. But that is like a me thing.
That's fair.
The Nell and whatever the brother's
Luke?
name relationship in Hill House is Luke. The Nell Luke relationship is really reminiscent to me of my relationship with my brother. So I definitely projected onto the two of them. And then everyone else, I was like, yeah, and they're there, and I hope that they're okay. But no, she was
valid.
She was good in that. And then I watched Spy Kids after that and didn't realize that was the same person until I watched this
you got
movie.
A pretty significant
and I was like, oh my God, that's the mom. Yeah. Well, but then I was like, oh my God, that's the mom from Spy Kids. And then I was like, oh my God, she's in like so many Flanagan things as actors are prone to be when they work with Flanagan. And then I'm like, oh my God, like everything fell into place. But the main thing was that's the mom from Spy Kids.
I did not realize that. God damn it. Shit.
Anyway, and then we're watching it, and Noah's like, this guy's in some stuff that I've seen, and I'm like, he's the president in National Treasure too, like without skipping a beat.
And I'm like, yeah, sure he is.
I
Like,
only
scroll
just
down,
found out
that's him.
today also that he was what's his face, Admiral Pike in Star Trek 2009, the J.J. Abrams one.
Yeah.
And he was president in National Treasure too. Gee, I gotta watch the National Treasure movies again.
You do. I think you'd like them.
There's something missing from my life
we
because
should.
I haven't watched National Treasure in too long.
We'll have to. Do you think we could put that on like when we hang out next time, like genuinely? Because I think that's a one that Tim would like having.
That's
on
a
as well.
Tim movie through and through. You kidding me?
I don't see why not. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Putting that on the roster.
So there's another thing I like about this movie. All right. I'm sitting here and I'm like, God, this is so Jeff pilled.
Yeah.
Because the eclipse happened and everything was red, signaling it's time to run. I'm never going to. That one feels. I feel like we're hitting the point where bringing it up constantly feels mean-spirited.
Oh, no, it's funny.
But it's going to come back around. Okay, thank God.
I fucking love
every time I see a red light
scenes.
in a movie.
I just hate what's happening in the eclipse scenes.
Right.
Yeah.
I like when they return to them and in her memory, returning to the bedroom after telling the story about what happened when he's like, we can't tell anyone.
Yeah, and it has the eclipse lighting
when she
in
comes
it.
back. And when Moonlight Man's eyes are replaced by the eclipse.
Yeah.
And it's just...
Mike Flanagan loves a fucked up eye as
He
well.
loves
I
glowing
love
eye
Mike
effects, yeah.
Mike Flanagan and I, it's the handshake meme and it's like weird eyes. Because that's a fucking...
Hold on, wait. This movie might be the most Mike Flanagan movie to Flanagan. Because, like...
Don't say that.
Hold on. Mike Flanagan stuff
Don't say
always
that to
has
me.
some selection of 5 things in it, right? Fucked up hands.
Kate Siegel.
Fucked up hands. Kate Siegel. Troubled family and relationship dynamics. I know Noah always says affairs. I don't think that's as common, but troubled family and relationship dynamics are a given.
I'll accept that.
That includes affairs too.
It does.
So
It covers
it's fair.
it. Oh shit, what's the other thing?
Fucked up eyes.
Glowing eyes of some sort.
Yeah.
And monologues.
And Stephen King.
Oh, monologues. Yeah, this has.
Does
Can we
this
jump
have
Stephen
all
King into
5?
that?
Because
No.
it's got glowing eyes, it's got a fucked up hand, it's got a brief Kate Siegel, it's got a monologue,
And it's got fucked up family
and it's got a
relationships.
fucked up
God, it has everything.
It's
It
got
does
a
have
troubled
everything.
family dynamic and a troubled relationship dynamic separately from one another.
It's got everything, but I
It's
don't think it
all
has
fun.
as
But you know what
much
else has
monologues
those?
as Midnight
It
Mass.
doesn't.
You know what else has all that?
Midnight
Fucking
Mass.
Hill House.
Oh, and Hill
So,
House. Does Hill House have the glowy eyes? I don't remember that.
There were
The
ghosts.
ghosts have them.
Of course
Yeah,
they
I'm
did.
Did the
pretty
ghosts?
sure.
Okay,
I think.
not as
I don't-
cool
I
as
don't
in
remember.
Midnight
Me and
Mass,
Becca
though.
just
Midnight Mass
started
had
watching
cool
through
eyes.
Hill House, actually.
Ooh, how's she like it?
She's enjoying it so far. But, like, you know, we're
Yay.
only, like, the first couple episodes in, so it's kind of, like, just getting rolling. You know how the earlier episodes of Hill House are. It's just like, hey, bad stuff,
Didn't-
more bad stuff, more bad stuff. You know?
Yeah.
Didn't Becca hate horror stuff?
She didn't hate it. She has historically had a very difficult time with it. But like this past year, she's been having an easier time with it, you know, getting scared of it less, more or less. And Yeah, and has been really enjoying an awful lot of it. She loved Hellraiser.
Yay. Oh, I meant to loan you Hellraisers 3 through 8.
Ooh, yeah.
Anyway,
I'm so excited
Gerald's
to watch those. I'm sure I will enjoy them unironically.
Ha 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 ha.
Was the dog the Moonlight Man's dog?
No, it's just a dog.
I kind of got the impression it was just a dog to be there for narrative parallels, but
That's the only impression I ever got.
Oh, here's another Flanaganism. We've been having a lot of dogs in fucked up situations. Yeah.
I don't know if that's a...
Well,
okay,
that is a
we're on a
semi-consistent
stretch
bit
right
of his.
now.
Yeah, because that's in Midnight Mass, that's in Oculus.
And that's in this one. That's the only
it's
three
in
that
this
I was
one.
thinking of.
Shit, is there a dog in Before I Wake?
Is there a dog in
There's a
Ouija?
cat in Hush, and there's cats in Hill House. I think that's just it might just be a conceit of the genre, though. I think
Yeah.
horror just likes having animals that are kind of messed up.
Horror loves
The cats in
hurting
Hill
animals,
House
yeah.
really did me. The cats in
rough.
Hill House
That
wrecked
shit was
me.
rough.
I almost stopped watching the show. I'm so glad I didn't, but I almost stopped because of the cats.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
a lot of cats.
I had a harder time with the doggy in Midnight Mass than with the cats, but they were both extremely rough.
Mm-hmm. I just have a thing for anyway, I'm not even going to talk about it. It's so rough. But yeah. Speaking of rough stuff, the degloving scene, let's talk about it. A little while ago, someone on Twitter actually, even was like, what is like a gore scene that's like sticks with you, like that's just uncomfortable. It's not scary. And I was immediately like, I hadn't even thought of Gerald's Game in like years, and I was immediately like, Gerald's Game, not even a question. That is like the scene in a movie that has like made me cringe the most.
Yeah, it's
ever.
like you see it starting to happen and you're like, oh fuck. And that has you like kind of looking a little bit more because you're like, oh shit, that looks rough. And you expect it's going to cut
and it's like,
away.
are we going
or
to cut away?
something.
Are we going to cut away?
And then it goes the rest of the way and you're like, ah.
Yeah, no, it's it's so well done. And like, because we had just, Noah and I watched Punisher 2004.
Was that because I
like,
reminded you that it existed, Noah? Because you were
Yeah.
you
If
were
I
both
say
tweeting
yes,
about
you
watching
might
it
get in
like
trouble.
immediately after I told you that Tom Jane was in Before I Wake.
Hey,
I'm
Jeff.
sorry. Yeah, it's
How
your
could you
fault that
do
you
I'm not
this
ruined my
sorry at
to
all.
marriage.
me?
'Cause I think that movie is terrible, but it is fun as hell.
It was not. I
Really?
was not having
You
a
had a
good
bad time?
time.
Nina
I
did not have a good
Wow.
time.
I don't know what it was. It may have just been the mood that I was in, but
Yes.
I did not have any fun with that movie, apart from like 2 or 3 things. One of my biggest problems with it is, and we've been watching a lot of Mike Flanagan.
Sure.
This is something that Mike Flanagan famously doesn't do, is that it cut away. It bitched out on a lot of like scenes that could have been good in a kind of like brutal way. More than once, specifically with Punisher, where they're like, oh, Punisher is going to be this fucked up vigilante. I've read Punisher comics,
Oh,
okay?
right, yeah.
They're like, Punisher is going to be a fucked up vigilante in this scene. And then he literally bitches out so hard that it's not even funny.
He doesn't kill anyone.
He doesn't
talking about the
kill anyone
popsicle
until, like,
scene. Is that what this is
the
about?
popsicle scene, and then the scene where he like comes and he's like he like seems like he's gonna throw dudes out a window,
yeah.
and he just throws money out as a distraction, and it's like, okay,
He doesn't kill anyone involved with the criminal enterprise until the last half of the final
he shoots
act.
those 2 dudes in the lobby.
Yeah,
That
but
was
they
like,
came at him. He doesn't
Right.
kill anyone who doesn't come at him, even though he's hunting them. It's a weird,
Yeah.
bad
he's
take
like, I'm
on
gonna
the
hunt down the
Punisher's,
people who
like-
are responsible
yeah.
for my entire family's death, except for like these people. For some reason, they're fine, because they're like lower down. But one of them is literally the popsicle scene guy is literally like he used to like work with him as an informant, but he's literally connected to the guy who actually killed his whole family.
Yeah.
This is not the Frank that I am familiar with, but. My point.
Hashtag not my Frank.
Hashtag not my Frank. But one thing I love about Flanagan, and this is like really refreshing, every time I see his stuff, I'm like, we're going to bitch out of this scene. We're not going to get to see the cool stuff. We're not going to get to see the gore.
Nope.
And every time Mike's like, you might want to like look away. And I'm like, no, because you're going to cut. And he never does.
That's the thing about his movies specifically, though, is when you get used to watching his shows, you get used to it all being like emotionally difficult for you because that's the stuff that he focuses more on in his shows. And then you watch one of his movies and you expect it to just be the well-crafted, like, you know, stories and emotional turmoil and whatnot. And you do get that most times. But then also he shows you all this fucked up shit to make you squirm in your seat. And you're like, oh, I forgot you could
Karen
do that,
Gillan.
Mike.
Watch Karen Gillan bite into a light bulb. And I'm like, okay.
Like, oh, you're showing me that, huh? Yeah, you're just going to watch all the skin get ripped off of this hand. How do you like that?
Gosh.
And I do
Can I
like
just...
it.
So, I don't know if this is... I feel like it's real, but it's something I see in movies a lot, that it could just be a made-up movie thing. But is it real if you, like, basically break your thumb, you can get out of handcuffs?
I feel like I've heard that before.
Yeah, because
Because I feel like I would much rather break my thumb than deglove
it's like
my
dislocating
hand.
the thumb, not breaking it.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's what I was going to say. The whole time watching this movie, I was like, I bet I could get out of that. No problem.
Yeah, usually when you see
Yeah,
people
you'd
do that,
probably be
actually, I
fine.
just saw that done in a movie yesterday because me and Becca just watched the first John Wick movie again. Yeah, fantastic. I fucking love it.
Great
But
movie.
you kind of need to be able to like grab it with your other hand in order to do that. So I think even if she had considered that to be an option, I don't think she would have been physically capable in this situation, would she?
I feel like you could potentially use the inner ring
That's
of
because
a handcuff.
I mean
to do it.
That's what I would
if you like positioned it and then bashed your hand
into the
it's
even
possible.
into the post
Yeah.
or like the other thing that like again I kept thinking like why doesn't she just do this? Oh, because her body isn't capable of it. Is like to get closer to the fucking phone. This is something that Noah and I were talking about. I simply would have dislocated my shoulder. But the thing that I was thinking was Noah's like, oh, it felt like she definitely could have reached that. But then it's like they're
the bedside table was weirdly
That was
far
rough.
off.
they're in a situation, I guess, like this isn't, I told Noah, like this isn't a Titanic door situation where we have to stretch belief. I'm sure that when they were setting up the scene and the shots, they were like, Carla, can you reach the phone? And she was like, no, I can't. And they were like, okay, cool. So we put it in the right spot. So it might like look wrong to us and we might kind of expect like, oh, she should have been able to reach that. But I'm fucking sure that they had her try and make sure that she couldn't before they actually did the thing.
I don't know. I was kind of doing the same thing as you though for that specific scene. I kind of thought it looked like she should have been able to reach it from what we saw. And I was just kind of like, no. All she has to do is like roll onto her stomach a little bit and she'll be able to reach an extra like couple inches and she'll have it. All she has to do is like put her right hand behind her head and roll over a little and she'll have it. Like I would have gotten it, I think, but like, nah.
Yeah, no, I had that thought too with the phone specifically. But let's all victim blame the woman handcuffed to a bed, I guess.
Yeah.
So true. Let's blame her.
Yeah. I'm simply
would've
built
stretched.
different.
Exactly.
Yeah, I thought about the thumb breaking thing though as well. The other things that are like in the movie that bug me because I'm a little CinemaSins bitch. The paper straw would have dissolved. She just like it would not have continued to
I
work
have
over
questions
the few
about
days.
whether it would have worked the first time, honestly. Like,
Yeah,
it just
like,
seems
is
like
it gonna be
wouldn't-
watertight
the different
enough?
layers of paper wouldn't seal against one another. I'm willing to suspend disbelief for it. I'm willing to suspend disbelief over the phone thing as well. It's not a huge thing.
This is nitpick
Yeah,
city.
absolutely. Not
But I
big
am gonna
deals.
pick those nits.
If we were going to take stuff out of this movie, I would not be starting with that.
No, yeah, not even a little. I wonder if Stephen King, while writing the fucking paper rolled up straw thing, if he went and did it. Because, like, I know as a writer, if it's something that's that easy to test, I would just do it and see if it works.
As a matter of fact, in the book, I read this earlier today. It's not a like a tag from the dress that she was wearing. She uses like a slip out like thing from like inside a magazine.
Oh.
Yeah. And I don't know if that would work better or worse or the same, but like it's not what is seen in the movie.
Interesting.
Yeah, here I'll try and find it to see what it was again so I can say words that I don't remember.
That's super fair.
Here we go.
Weird
A
little
subscription
details.
offer
Oh,
card
God.
from inside a magazine.
Okay. So that could have maybe been laminated in a way or something.
That's maybe a little bit easier to suspend disbelief for, but also raises more questions as to why she was able to reach it. Whatever.
Yeah, I see why he made the changes he did, but I'm mostly just like, the whole like thing still is. I mentioned this in the server though, or in the host chat, so I wanted to bring it up. Her childhood bedroom that they have the conversation in, and the bedroom that she's stuck in are mirrors of each other with how they are set up, and like the colors that are used are the same. The light blues and the like yellows that we don't see really much in any of the other sets, but the colors are the same in those 2 bedroom sets. I just thought that was really interesting cool. And kind of shows how she's still like mentally trapped in that time of her life because that's where her trauma took place.
Yeah, it's like what is it Ghost Gerald who says it later on in the movie where he's like or Ghost Jesse maybe who says it where they're like, you've been in the same trap just from a different person ever since you were blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it was early on. Gerald's like, let's be real. Or Jesse's like, let's be real. He didn't put you in this trap. That other dude shagged it. Like, and it's like, okay. Yeah. Again, I get it. I get what you're doing. I just don't want to.
It could have been done differently. It could easily have been done differently. And the only reason that set of like flashback memories are brought into the story is so she will remember that when you cut yourself before the blood clots, it's as slick as oil. She could have remembered that from so many other things. We did not need to get the specific story that we got. Like,
yeah. And I get like the reason that like certain things like set her off and the reason that she's with Gerald and blah, blah, blah. Really, to me, again, it's just a story that I don't want to like.
Sure.
Maybe it's important to some people. I can understand that. Me personally, I just don't like it. I don't want to read it. Sometimes stories aren't for you and therefore you won't like them. And I also just think that I don't want to assume anything about Stephen King or anything about like his life, but it's one of those things where it's like, this is a really personal, fucked up story, and who are you to be the one to tell it, kind of a thing, you know? And I have all that problem with a lot of the ways that Stephen King writes certain subject matter, where it's like, you know, you should be allowed like to write things you haven't personally experienced. I think that's important. But if you're going to use those heavy topics in horror, I think that you might like end up making some choices that hurt more than they help. And I think that's something that might have happened in this one.
Yeah, I get that.
So,
is that it?
Noah's notes?
Noah's notes?
Jeff, got anything?
There's, I mean, I was just reading about this earlier. There's like a million references to other Stephen King stories in this movie. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, I caught.
Yeah, did you guys see Penny?
He said the thing. He said the in the beam or whatever. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, that's a Dark Tower reference.
Shut
apparently.
That's Mike's fault.
So
Mike.
That was Mike Flanagan.
Hold on though. Because there's 2 other Dark Tower references.
Mike.
Yeah, the reference
Mike
to the
loves
Moonlight
Dark
Man
Tower.
and
We know
his bag
this.
of bones. That phrase specifically is also directly from the Dark Tower. And there is a close-up of a little bird's skull that he wears on his necklace. It's a rook's skull specifically. And that is known as like a thing from some particular character in the Dark Tower. Yeah, and then at one point she calls the dog Cujo. That's another Stephen King book.
I know that one, yeah.
Yeah, I caught that one.
No, go ahead.
No, I forgot what I was about to say, so you're good.
Oh, okay. So, this is a little bit off topic, but on the topic of Stephen King, one thing about Mike Flanagan is that he's kind of convincing me to give King another chance. It's a chance that I'm sure I will quickly retract. But I went to a bookstore the other day. Local bookstore, to kind of talk with the owner about getting my books in there. And while I was there, it's the first used bookstore that I've been to since I moved here. So I love everything about used bookstores. So I was just kind of wandering around, like absorbing the like 80s fantasy covers, and I got to like the Stephen King shelf, and I'm like, of course. Yeah. But I saw Dr. Sleep, and I flipped to a scene in Dr. Sleep, and it's Abra bullying Rose, and it's the funniest fucking shit. She quotes Shakespeare to Rose, and Rose's internal monologue is, I fucking hate this child. This child sucks so hard. And she's like she's trying to play it cool, and Abra's like, yeah, I guess you wouldn't understand Shakespeare. That's why Crow Daddy was better, because he understood when I would make Shakespeare references. Like, I bet he would anyway. You, on the other hand, are just scared and can't think straight and probably wouldn't even understand a reference you recognized. And Rose is like, I hate this child. I'm not scared of this child. I'm not running away. Oh, I'm running away. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to read Dr. Sleep. Yeah. So I'm going to pick that one up. And I do kind of, since Flanagan's adapting The Dark Tower, and since I do like fantasy, and since I do like stories about scary men in black who are also maybe the devil, I think I'm probably going to try and read The Dark Tower. And if I end up loving it, I will eat my hat.
Okay.
I'm not going to read The Dark Tower, but I will watch it.
I will support you, Nina, in reading The Dark Tower.
Thanks.
I'll support you in eating your hat.
I will definitely also support you in eating your hat. I do intend at some point in the hopefully near future to read The Shining and Pet Sematary both. Because I just want to give them a shot.
Do you have The Shining?
I own The Shining. You can borrow it.
We have it, yeah.
I've never read it. I lost it. It's in the house somewhere.
It's on the horror shelf.
It's on the horror shelf.
We have a horror shelf because we're cool like that.
Yeah.
Whoa. You're so rad.
We are.
I also have a horror shelf. It's called my desk.
Hey, yo.
Hey, yo.
Pog face.
Okay. You know what else is rad?
Nose notes.
I want to skip all the way down to halfway through the first page where Noah has the note in quotation marks, yeppers, and then a bunch of throwing up emojis.
I say yeppers sometimes.
Yeah, but you don't say yeppers to your weird fucking dad who's like, would you please sit on my lap?
God, let's not explore that with my dad.
Let's not even think about that. Noah says...
Okay, yep.
Never be able to look at Henry Thomas the same way again.
This was the first thing I saw.
Henry Thomas does another fucked up thing for Flanagan. Oh
no, Henry Thomas.
I can't. Anyway, Noah said the one thing I don't praise Flanagan enough for has got to be his sound design. That thump as Gerald hits the floor is really something else, and the metal cuffs on the wood really heighten the panic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's another great thing in this movie. We get the first 15, 20 minutes of this movie. Actually really great. Like really good.
I love the whole intro and setup for this movie. It's so
I love
and
the
then
setup.
As soon as we hit the flashback, that's where it takes a big old fat stinky shit on the story.
Little bit, yeah.
Outside of that, it's pretty nice.
I don't love the setup.
Fair enough, that's fine. Well, yeah.
I have my issues with a lot of the setup. But the part of the setup I like is him dying. I think it's it's kind of like there's a scene in the beginning of a movie that came out recently that I watched. One of my like things in horror that just gets me is people just dying in the middle of a normal interaction with someone else.
This is why we're never watching Final Destination.
I cannot watch Final Destination. Dying just in ways that could happen just every day is just really like, I know that it's ridiculous and not realistic and that Final Destination is like completely fucked up in that way. But
what if I did slip on a marble
but
and then step on a banana peel and then get impaled?
I have a lot of it and I just can't deal with thinking about that stuff. It stresses me the fuck out. And there's certain scenes in certain movies recently that do the same thing. And I have that stress about other people in my life too. So what this movie does is it plays on that idea of like, what if I were in a normal interaction with someone and then in the middle of that interaction, positive or negative, they just fucking died. That's awful. I love that as a setup, especially like just in the way that it happened in this movie. But
yeah,
I don't love anything else about that.
Okay.
Very much.
Yeah. The setup of like bare bones, two people are having kinky sex, one of them is tied to the bed and then the other one has a heart attack and the person is stuck. That's like an interesting setup. But the uncomfy, like exploring this guy's rape fantasy where he didn't tell his wife and just how that whole interaction plays out is super gross and icky to me.
It would have been bad enough.
I did not enjoy
this
it.
is the problem with the whole thing, is it would have been bad enough if it was a fully consensual thing and the two of them, even if there were relationship issues and that was still explored, but the two of them were like consensually doing this and then he died and she was stuck. There's a huge difference between I agreed to be handcuffed to this bed and I am having a good time and I am now handcuffed to this bed and I am not having a good time. And there could have even been a really interesting dichotomy there of like enjoying it to suddenly this is a thing I enjoyed. Is
like
it
could have taken it like almost in a little bit of a Hellraiser-y direction, right? Where she's just kind of lying there like, well, shit, this is what I wanted, wasn't it? Why am I not enjoying it? Oh, right, it's because my fucking husband is dead. Like, that could have made for a lot more interesting character stuff from her, potentially, right?
Right, that made her
or not more
less
interesting
of just
necessarily, but like equally interesting,
different.
but with fewer issues, perhaps.
Yeah, in just a way that's kind of less predictable.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about the way that this story is told, is it's like just the most kind of, especially for 92, basic understanding of the way that kink would work and this would go. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like it's missing a lot of kind of fun and different stuff that could have been done with the same setup. But you know, it was the 90s and it's Stephen King, and if there's like he's unpredictable in the throw a serial killer into the end of the book way and not in that way, and not in the like I'm going to explore my conceit in a truly original and groundbreaking way kind of thing, you know? Like he can be. I'm not going to say he can't be. He definitely has his moments. But in this specific situation, he's not. He tells this story about exactly the way you would expect Stephen King to tell this story.
I feel like Stephen King is just like the Bob Dylan of horror. You know, like he's got these ideas with like great bones, but you got to like take his voice off of it and have somebody else play it, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Valid.
Noah's notes. Sorry, I immediately saw one that just plays right into what we're talking about. Noah says, Stephen really likes making his women so damaged, and Stephen. Noah said, Noah's got a lot of moments. Noah says, she for sure won't blame you. Nobody would think it's your fault, quoting the dad. And then Noah's notes afterwards, I hate this man, I hate this man, I hate this man, I hate this man.
He's so awful.
Yeah.
That's one thing I will say, though, for all that I don't like the story that this movie is telling, I think that scene is incredibly, like, the reason it's so uncomfortable is because
it's very real.
Yeah, it's real.
Too real. Yeah.
It's
like his manipulation tactic of not even just being like, not simply just saying, hey, you can't tell anybody about this, but him slowly being like,
oh, we gotta tell someone.
We should tell somebody, but I mean, your relationship with your mom has been so bad and this will make it worse, but we should tell somebody though. Like, we can't just keep this a secret.
Making it seem like it's her
and just
idea
like planting
and
the
she
idea
wants
of the
it.
mom is going to be mad to like force her to be the one that's like, no, we can't tell anybody. And then him being like,
and then
are you sure? And
then for the rest of her life, she's
gross.
like, I can't tell anyone because I'm the one who said we should keep it a secret. It's very similar. How I felt watching that scene is very similar to how I felt watching a lot of the scenes with Bev Keane, because it's just such well-written manipulation. Specifically the scene where Bev runs into Aaron in the closet and starts talking about her mom. Like that's the vibes of just like, I am having such an innocent conversation on my end. How could anyone read into what I'm saying? And then the other person in the scene is just standing there the whole time feeling like punch after punch. And it's really well done, but I still don't love it.
Yeah, it's uncomfy as fuck.
Noah says, I love Kate's reaction to the glass crush. Very natural. Yeah, I think the mom knew at that moment, like pretty much what had happened, or at least that something had happened.
There's no way not
but,
to
like,
pick
what do you
it up,
do?
right? Like,
Right. No, her expression in that scene and the conversation had been happening, but because and their relationship was already so rough, maybe she even did try and ask Jesse about it.
shit.
And Jesse, because of everything that she had had that chat and conversation about with her dad,
yeah.
was like, I can't say anything. I think that like based on Kate's reaction in that scene, that the mom knew more than Jesse thought she did.
Yeah, I could
Very
see that.
much.
Yeah. Also, just as a real quick, like, execution of this movie is very fun thing. That's a scene with a really neat transition on it.
I love all the fade to like turn the lights
it's
out,
not
but you
a
still
fade
see
to
that the
black,
scene is
but
there.
they
Transitions.
just kill the lights. I love that. It looks so
Yeah.
cool.
Huge fan of that.
Yeah, and then the way that transitions into the young her with her dad standing at the sink scene that's just like in the background of
that was
her
fun.
cuffed to the bed. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun too, yeah.
Very like stage play-ish. The way that then like the lights go down and they're just standing there in the darkness and you see them until it cuts again.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah, that's about it.
Oof.
I think it was really, so this is off topic. It was really funny when Noah and I sat down to watch this movie. It's a Netflix original, right?
Oh.
We sat down to watch this movie and Noah was on his rewatch and it was halfway through and we're like, I wonder where he left off. And then we hit it and it was the eclipse scene.
Oh.
So Noah got halfway through and was like, oh, this is why I didn't like this movie, and stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the point to bail, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's like by that point, there are a lot of things that like I really enjoy, but I don't rewatch because I remember every story beat so like clearly that I just don't feel the need to like experience it in real time again. And Gerald's game is like that, but in the negative, where going into this movie, I was like, I pretty much remember beat for beat this entire movie. And once you experience that opening scene and the like kind of details in that, to me, it's like once we hit the eclipse scene, I'm like, all right, I remember what happens. Bye.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
does anybody have final thoughts about Gerald's game?
I think we've said
About all I've got.
said everything.
said
on
our
it.
Hit just about all my stuff.
I think at the end of next episode, the true ending of Flanuary, we should talk about our favorite fucked up hand scene from Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
Like each of our favorites.
We should do that.
Okay. I'll think about, because this one's definitely the most fucked up, but I don't know if it's my favorite. So I'm ready to like.
Yeah. But so next time we're doing Ouija. Is that the plan?
Well, it's either that or
Yep.
Before I Wake. So
I'm good with
all
either
right,
one.
so I have to watch the previous 2 Ouija movies so I can fill you all in on what's going on. I'm sure the
Jeff
lore
has
will
to
be
bear this
deep.
burden.
I mean, this one's a prequel, so this one like sets,
Oh, shit,
is supposed
you're
to be the
right.
one that sets off the story.
I
So you
literally-
don't even need to watch the other ones.
It's about Harvey
Oh.
P. Ouija, who made the Ouija
Of course,
board.
right?
Okay. Yeah, so Ouija next time.
Yeah, Ouija, Origin of Evil.
Cool.
Super
Well,
duper.
thank you all so much for hanging out and listening. We appreciate it. Our first double feature episode. I think these were 2 good movies to do a double feature of. But yeah, I'm Emma, also known as Emma Panada. You can find me online at Twitch and Twitter at Emma Panada. I'm also writing a TTRPG called All the Witches. You can find information about that at allthewitches_ on Twitter. We're going to Kickstarter March 16th.
March
March
16th.
16th.
Mark it on your
Hell yeah.
calendars.
It's on my calendar.
And if you'd like to support my project, please do. That'd be very kind.
I'm Noah. You can find me as Bubbadabad, Bubbadabad. New Dead Space came out 2 days ago as of recording.
Yo!
I'm so mad because I forgot until I was on the way to work, and literally until tomorrow, I won't have had a chance to touch this game. But I'm big excited for it, so expect my thoughts on that.
Yeah, cool. Poggies.
Poggy.
I don't like that.
Don't like that. Anyway, I'm Nina.
Poggy.
I'm Nina.
Poggies.
I'm Nina. I am newly single as of 30 seconds ago. So my dating profile, you can find me at Nina Wolverina on Twitter. DM me and flirt. Don't do that. Actually, I will block you immediately. But I do art there, and you can find it there if you like art. And I also wrote a book. If you liked Midnight Mass, you might like my book, maybe. I don't want to give myself too high praise, but I tend to like things that I also wish I had written. And so, yeah, read my book, maybe. Thanks.
And
Mike Flanagan, when's your TV show of the Creed of Gethin?
God, if I told Noah about this, there are two people out there that I feel like I feel really connected to as far as like a storyteller and like inspiration level, and it's Neil Gaiman and Mike Flanagan. I just feel like the stories that we tell are like very like come from similar places, and if they ever read, I saw Mike Flanagan talking about how he listened to the Magnus Archives, and I'm like, how come they get to have him experience it? So I feel that way very much.
of the Mike Flanagan cast, who would be playing Quincy?
None of them.
None of them?
Rahul
Okay.
Kohli.
Who would Rahul Kohli play?
Raul. Marlo.
Yeah, he could.
Ooh.
He could, though.
I got one leg in it.
Shit. No one would play Quincy because Quincy's explicitly half Korean, and
yeah.
I don't think he's ever cast a half Korean person.
Get on that, Mike. Come on.
But Marlo could be Rahul Kohli. Yeah, come on, Mike. Give me a head cast for my character, please. But yeah, no. Please read my book. Bye.
The book has Rahul Kohli in it, if you decide that he's in it.
If you decide that's what he looks like in your head, then the book has Rahul Kohli in it.
Kate Siegel would be the mean priest.
She could.
Person.
Oh, Harriet. Yeah, she totally could.
yeah.
I think she's a little young, but I would let it happen.
I would excuse it.
I would allow it.
Anyway, thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Did Jeff give out there? Did Jeff?
didn't
I
do
was
an intro
going to,
or
and
an
then he
bypassed
outro.
started
Jeff.
talking, and then we got sidetracked. And then you can find me on Tumblr at What Is It You Pray For. I'm still on Twitter at Bubba Wubba Dab. I'm replying to other people's posts, so I guess I'm still committed to using it, I guess.
In the fun way.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, everybody. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Hoggy.
No.
Hoggies.
The problem is that the thing that I've seen these people saying over and over is that it's
Nice one.
they're saying that it's very like they're saying that it's like very even-handed and like quote doesn't pick a side about whether the church is like a good or a bad thing.